Hi, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday, September 12th, 2023 Select Board meeting. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Mary Beth, why don't you lead us?
Sure.
Oh, and I got to also say we're being televised.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to make a quick little statement before we go to citizens' input. Certainly comments were made during the previous Select Board meeting, having highlighted the need for me to provide a clearer account of the process that led to the selection of Paige Duncan as acting Assistant Town Manager at that time. On June 14th, the town manager was on leave, and the board learned of his intentions to resign. So it was critical for the town to appoint someone to an acting leadership role in order to ensure continuity for the town's operations. Our town charter has established a strong town manager form of government, and as a result, the town must designate an individual to act in the absence of the town manager. As board chair, I put Paige Duncan's name forth to suggest her for the acting assistant town manager role. After the departure of a former assistant town manager, I recalled that the former town manager at the time, Bill Keegan, had appointed Paige to act in his stead if he was gone on vacation or took a day off. Based on that and my experience working with Paige, I believe she was the right person to nominate. During this time, the town needed a leader who understands the needs of the town's residents and employees, and I believe Paige is the right person to help us during this transitional time. Paige was appropriately nominated and appointed in a public meeting, which was properly posted, but I regret that there was not more discussion surrounding her nomination for that acting role. As the chairman, I apologize for the lack of further discussion of this matter, but please be assured that my actions were driven by genuine concern for the well-being of the town of Foxborough. As you know, the board was dealing with a complex situation involving our legal counsel, and we were bound by open meeting law and employee privacy rights, which we take very seriously. I want to ensure the citizens of Foxborough that we are moving forward with our plans to fill the permanent town manager's position, as you'll see later in our meeting. And we'll engage in an open, fair, and competitive process in order to find the best candidate. But I'd also like to mention at this time that, Paige's nomination wasn't suggested lightly. Paige has a very strong background, and I just want to highlight a couple of things that I think are important for us going forward. First of all, Paige has a master's degree in community planning. She also completed Leadership Matters Public Sector Consortium Leadership Development Program. Boy, that was a mouthful. Out of the Lincoln Institute in Cambridge, Mass. She's also received Supervisory Leadership Development Program certificate out of UMass Amherst. And I believe since her nomination, she's also taken 2 additional courses in certification. So I think she's more than highly qualified to help us over these next few months. Okay, moving on with our agenda. Anyone here for citizens' input? Seeing none, we'll continue on with an introduction.
Yes. Come on.
Come on up. Marie, you want to come up and introduce? Since you know him best.
So this is Brandon Roberts, our new Assistant Finance Director. I stole him from the town of Concord. If you want to give a quick intro about yourself.
Sure. Nice to meet everyone. Like Marie was saying, my name is Brandon Roberts. I'm coming from the town of Concord, where I spent the last 5.5 years working in their finance department, kind of balancing sort of 2 hats under their budget and purchasing director. So I was kind of mainly responsible for stitching together portions of the budget involving most of the general fund departments, as well as working with some of the enterprise fund managers, particularly recreation and water and sewer, and helping them triage their budget process. The other piece of my position there was also dealing with local government procurement. So I was assisting writing documentation and stuff like that, and kind of assisting departments as they kind of go out and procure goods and services and sort of contracts along with that. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yep. I did work with Brandon for about 2 years before I left Concord. So I have personal experience working with him. And in looking for a replacement for myself, I was looking for someone with similar skills, a similar skill set, you know, and someone who could mix in well with the team, you know, with having the team-oriented environment, a can-do attitude, and just someone who's very smart. He's much better at Excel than I am, so that's a big plus. But I think between him and I, you'll continue to see the budget process taken to a higher level than where it's at right now. So we're excited to have him on board. He's been great so far, no complaints. And I'm sure you guys will get to know him a little as we're getting into the budget process and going through all that.
What's your educational background, Brandon?
So I have a bachelor's in history, but I also have an MPA from Suffolk University.
Welcome to Foxborough.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
Come highly recommended.
And Brandon's been great so far. I mean, this team has, you know, anything I have procurement, I even actually kind of bypass Marie a lot, or I see her as a courtesy, because Brandon's the guy I've already discovered. So it's been great to work with him on the log cabin lease and a variety of other issues we've been dealing with. He's jumped right in. So it's a tremendous asset to the team. And you could tell these two are comfortable together. So it's really brought the finance department back to, I mean, not that it was bad, but it's just, they're gelling down there, so it's been great to watch.
And I personally thought you were phenomenal in Excel, to sort of think someone's even better than you.
Oh yeah, you should see what he does.
Google is my secret.
Well, welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you for
Very
taking
much.
an extra couple of minutes and introducing yourself to us in the town.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Wow, how convenient, Chris. Guess who's up?
Get to.
Yep, take your time. Chris is going to start with the strategic sidewalk survey results, and then a couple of other presentations he's going to make to us also, town bench policy review and assistant DPW director position.
And I'll just give him a little time. He needs to log in, but I know his counterpart, Lance, was supposed to be here tonight, but unfortunately, Lance lives in North Attleboro and is dealing with flooding in his house right now. So
Ooh.
otherwise, he would have been right there with Chris, but unfortunately, like 200 others, he is dealing with some pretty severe flooding situations at home, so. That's what, so Chris, I think, just came running from football practice.
Yep.
He doesn't play, he's a coach.
Oh, yeah, Frederick coaching.
I don't even think it's over yet.
No, they're still going. Luckily, there's a good group of 6 of us that are coaching that team, so there's plenty of backup over there. And I'm just trying to connect to the internet.
Chris, you want me to start with the bench policy?
Yeah, why don't
All
we
right.
jump into that while I
'Cause-
fight this?
Yeah, because
Yeah, let's
that's
go ahead.
kind of me, and Chris has obviously been part of it, but in your packets, we have a bench policy that's, I've been promising for a couple months. So just to give you a little background, a few things have come up. We've had some folks that want to donate benches, and Mr. Beck being one of them. And since he first asked, we realized there really isn't a mechanism by which how to handle these benches, who decides, where do they go. It also brought to light the fact that the benches on the common are kind of in rough shape. And, I went to Chris going, oh, this will be easy, and nothing's easy. So then the question was whether we we kind of went through this whole iteration of, right now, the benches on the common have the concrete bases. And so do you just try to retrofit those again, and then the wood deteriorates, or do you take advantage of some of the newer materials that are going to last longer? So that kind of put a pause in it for another month or two. And then the Disability Commission has gotten approval to put a couple benches in. So then it really brought it to the forefront where, like, we need to address this. So we did research and came up, looked at a bunch of different towns and their policies, came up with one to propose. We do not expect a vote tonight. This is something, your first blush at seeing it, because we do think there's going to be some questions. But basically, this process that you have in front of you would outline, standards and procedures, talks about maintenance and replacement, talks about terms and conditions. And we're looking at it as handling it two different ways. One, for the common, where the select board would make those decisions on the common, because you kind of have the jurisdiction over the common. And then the town manager would handle anywhere else in town, kind of consistent with use of town properties. That's open for discussion. That's just how we, how we drafted it. We would have standard benches that would be used, again, one kind on the common and one kind in other areas. The review would go through the Department of Public Works. Applications would go there. We'd get comments. They'd have to get comments. For example, if it's going to be on recreation property, the Rec Commission would have to comment, or 30 days would have to go by. Same with conservation and so on. So this is a draft policy. The other major issue is when we started to really think about the procedure, and especially on the common, I think Doc was when he said, because we said, well, what about the existing plaques on the common? And I can say that in these communities, your plaques were good for 10 years. And then after that, they would offer up the right to renew, but otherwise you would have to renew it. So I don't have that answer. He's like, what about Vince Igo? And I don't dare tread on anybody's feet, but we'd have to come up with that process. And then it was like, if there's X number of benches on the common, how do you open it up to consideration? What if you get too many applications and then you have someone who's really well-known and then you have others that are less known? So there will be some discretionary issues that have to be done. And I put them in a little box at the bottom of the thing, is like how to handle existing plaques and process by which applicants will be chosen for plaques, and what if more applications are received than benches? How do you choose, and who chooses? So have fun with that one, because I could just envision where there's, certain, and I don't know if you have like honorary, I don't know how you handle that, but, and maybe we wouldn't get a tremendous number, or maybe you could just add an extra bench or two, but that's kind of, I wanted you to start thinking about how we're going to handle that, because, we might end up with more people that want benches than we have room for, and they want to be on the common, and what do you do with like Vince Igo and other folks, so.
Just a suggestion, I know it's very preliminary, but once you guys decide like how many benches there are going to be, maybe you set aside and say, okay, say there was 10 benches. 2 could be maybe just somebody who wants to, they have someone they want to honor. Maybe there are 5 that you set a specific criteria. What I was thinking about, Doc will remember this. Doc and I were involved when we named the Hearn Field for Jack Martinelli. And when we start to look into it, there's a criteria. And so maybe somebody can sit down and, for that one, I know that one, just because it was a town field, they had to be an educator. Remember, there were certain things, so.
But that was through the school system.
Oh, no, but what I'm saying, something similar.
Yep.
We would create our own criteria.
Yeah, the school system did have some criteria.
Yeah,
too.
so
That's right.
maybe the people involved, maybe sit down and you say, okay, I'm not sure what I just maybe think that maybe you could even break it up that you had different levels. Mm-hmm. So if there was somebody who was deserving but maybe didn't quite fit the criteria, maybe there was 8 that had to be a certain criteria, 2 something else, or just a suggestion maybe to try to, because I think I would guess you might get a lot of people, there's a lot of incredible people that have served the town and have lived in this town, and so I think you might get a lot. So maybe that would help you guys to, so if you don't meet the criteria, you're not turning anybody away. And I think it would be a very difficult decision for people who it was gonna be, so.
Yeah, and I think you could do a lottery, but then you risk, what if someone, really renowned,
Yeah,
like say a Jack off the lat or whatever, someone like that where you'd never want to say no to someone who's done that much for the community. I'm only using him as an example. I know he's alive and well, but just saying, you wouldn't want a situation where he wasn't, you couldn't honor him, and so that's a
Yeah.
really good idea.
yeah.
I think the other
maybe
thing is
different things, like someone who served on certain committees, or, I'm just brainstorming, I don't know
No,
exactly
it's
what they
helpful.
would be, but maybe if you come up with something like that, it'll make it that much easier to you, so you don't feel like you're turning somebody away,
That's
Hit all,
what
hit all the benchmarks.
I like it.
That's what this is all about.
Yeah.
Spitballing,
Yeah.
throwing some ideas out, but ultimately, it's our policy,
Yes.
yeah.
You guys make
It's
that
us.
decision. Yeah.
Is there like a financial benchmark to donate a bench, or how does
You'd be
that
paying
work?
for the cost of a bench, so we have to come up with that fee. It would change, as the costs went up, but it basically there's something in here that discusses the costs, and they'd be responsible for it.
Right.
The other opportunity is I have seen in other communities where you might have 2 plaques on one bench, and perhaps then you have a split cost.
Right.
So that's another opportunity. Some might not like that, others might not care. But yes, there would be a cost. It would be for 10 years. It also says that if it's destroyed or damaged, that would be like the end of it. You'd have to re-up it to do it, because otherwise it would be on the town's dime to do that. So unless insurance covered it, but probably wouldn't. So, yeah.
And as simple stuff as, I think Paige alluded to earlier, do we want that, what's that, not pergo, but the more permanent type of plastic versus the wood that we have now, which is obviously getting moldy, and what's the, composite was the.
Yeah,
term.
and we had looked at, in the policy, 2 different styles of benches.
here.
So we looked at one bench for the common and the uptown area, kind of matching the theme of the fence around the common, the fluted light posts that we have up there now, sticking with that same idea. And, we were looking at like a black metal, bench for that with slats, getting away from the wood and the concrete that, just deteriorates over time. And then for the playground areas, recreation areas, we were looking at something, those are the 2 different types. So looking in the outskirts of town, playground areas, recreation areas, something that composite, that recycled plastic type of bench that's gonna, is meant to last. I did do a count on the common. There are 21 locations for benches that have the pre-poured concrete pads from the existing benches. Some of them have gone broken and missing, but they're on the common. There were 21 benches up there.
I would not have guessed that many.
Yep. And then another, we were thinking probably another 2 or 3 along Central Street, one in front of the steamer shed. So probably in the, vicinity of 25 benches, give or take, for the area, for the uptown area.
I had 3 just quick thoughts. So under general, I think we sometimes are a little bit siloed, town and school, and when people think town property, I don't think that they would necessarily exclude a school. So I do think we should call out that it does not apply to the school. And I think at the same time, we should encourage them to have a policy, because there are many different benches I can think of at the Adjourn or different places. So maybe try to wrap that in somehow. Under section E, I think we should say the policies are reviewed annually or as needed by the town manager and select board. And then, not to complicate things, but trees, memorial trees. I know we have a few of those, and I know one memorial tree is missing on the common, and someone did approach me about that. So, maybe coming off the heels of this, we can quickly, have, maybe it's even part of this, a little tree policy or a separate one, but I think it's good timing to maybe look at, there are a few of them. I know there's one that exists right here, there's one on the common, there's one at the Adjourn, so just looking at that as well.
We can easily incorporate that. Some of the examples we saw were both, but I wasn't aware there was, that we had memorial trees. I
Yeah,
guess.
we do.
Okay.
And one tree's gone, someone brought it up to me too.
And there's a few along Main Street too, in
Yeah.
front of my house and a
Yeah.
little further down. I think there's 3 or 4.
Yeah.
They have plaques and everything?
Yeah,
Yeah,
down at the base.
Okay.
There's
Yeah.
one over by the horseshoe pits too.
Yeah, so we do have some trees. People have brought up what happens, like, I don't know if the tree at the north end of the common was diseased or if someone hit it or, what happened, but I think it's a good time just to maybe take a quick peek at it if we're reviewing this.
Okay, we can definitely incorporate that.
Any other thoughts, Seth?
Yeah, I guess my only thought is certain, say their benches or their squares or their trees. So Mr. Igoes, I think, should be permanent, because the town wants to have his name, live on. Other ones where there are folks who want to pay for it, maybe that's more of on a rotating basis, lottery type of thing. So sort of the ones that are designated, like these people, the town decided that they should be memorialized forever, and then the other ones are sort of pay as you go.
I like that, like a permanent bench indicators.
Yeah.
Okay.
So any other thoughts? This is, we'll bring it back. We're not taking a vote today, but, give a week to maybe look at it. Any additional thoughts, send it off to Paige.
Yeah,
And she'll collate it all and get it back to us maybe in the next meeting, so
maybe.
maybe.
Maybe the one after
Meeting or two. There's no rush, though.
Yeah,
There's no rush.
Well, there
This
is
was-
kind of a rush, but I can't guarantee I'll have it in 2 weeks, but definitely want to get it turned around, because there are folks waiting, and I
Okay.
do want to get that taken care of.
Good. So any further thoughts? Forward that to Paige. All right, Chris?
All right. Next up, I guess going back one. So this kind of, and I'm going to work my way through this. Lance prepared this and was ready to speak on it, and I told him priorities are at home. So, I jumped into this project, late last winter as we were going into town meeting last spring. Lance, Matt Brennan, and Andrew Putini with the fire department were all working on a project together to work on a strategic plan for sidewalks. This is the survey results, and putting the survey together was really a result of that project. Coming off of town meeting, the hot topic of sidewalks. Should we be spending more money on sidewalks? Should we be doing maintenance work? Should we do expanding? So this is really, the survey that went out really talks about all that. And we reached out, we got almost 300 results from the residents. We were hoping for more. Paige's housing study from a few years ago and survey from a few years ago is kind of the benchmark, where she got almost 1,000 or over 1,000 survey results. Sidewalks apparently were not as hot of a topic as we thought they had been, or had been discussed. Could have been the time of year, putting it out just after school got out, people are away on vacation. But one of the things we worked on was the vision statement for this project was Foxboro residents wanted to participate in creating greater walkability within the construction of safe sidewalks, which are accessible to playgrounds, public facilities, bike trails, parks, etc., and meet the needs of the community. And again, that Leadership Matters team was Georgie Bishop. I jumped in last in the spring. Lance, Matt Brennan, and Andrew were really the driving team from the beginning of that project. One of the things that we hit first off in looking at how do we take care of our sidewalks was our budget limitations and availability. So going back, historically, we've really just had the Chapter 90 funding from the state. It does involve everything within the public layout. So we can use that for sidewalks, we can use that for road paving, we can use that for curbing, we can use it for drainage underneath the road, we can use it for those utilities, and everything within the public right-of-way, we can use that funding for. Unfortunately, it's not enough money to properly maintain the paved surfaces, never mind adding in the sidewalks, replacing curbing and all of that that goes into it. Meals tax, when it was initially appropriated and that funding was created, was going to be split between OPED and the roadways. The majority of that has been going to OPED in recent history. We did have a few years where the DPW benefited from that for our road paving projects, where we were spending over $1 million a year, which is where we should be. Unfortunately, that's dropped off over the last few years. And that goes into the financial policy that was revised in 2021, that we were looking to spend $1 million a year towards pavement management, which could include sidewalk renovation, maintenance, repairs, and expansion. Going into a little bit of our backlog for paving as well as our sidewalks, we have 94 miles of paved roadways. Estimated backlog, so we do a pavement management study on our roadways. Usually we update it every 3 years. Looking at a backlog of work of over $6 million. So if we were to do everything right now and get everything up to, a brand new riding surface, we'd be spending over $6 million to do that right now. Sidewalks were surveyed in 2019. We have 72 miles of sidewalks in Foxboro. And based on again, the backlog put together by the engineering company, we're almost $7 million worth of work that is needed just to maintain the sidewalks that we have. Yes.
How much would you estimate, and maybe it's a mile, maybe it's 5 miles, have been unused for years, if not decades, and you could just dig them up, plant grass, and call it a day?
A lot.
I can think of like 4 spots in my head that are like,
Yeah.
jungle is taken over, or the sidewalks are virtually gone.
There are a lot of sidewalk miles that exist in subdivision roadways, dead-end streets, where, in the 70s and 80s, the planning boards in a lot of these towns wanted, bigger was better. They wanted 36 feet of paved surface, they wanted sidewalks on both sides of the street, and that was where they went. And now we're going the other direction, where we're down to 24 feet of paved surface, if not 22 in some of these neighborhoods, and we're doing a sidewalk on one side of the street and it's hitting the cul-de-sac and it's stopping there. So there are probably 20 miles of sidewalk
20 miles.
that exist in those neighborhoods that are, the trees have broken the sidewalk and the roots are coming through. If
They're
we were to
not
go,
passable. I mean, some places you just walk on the street, or you walk on the other side of the sidewalk on the other side of the street.
Yep. And some of those are in those neighborhoods that have very wide paved surfaces. So really, the roadway itself has enough room for
Bikes.
vehicles to travel, as well as kids on bikes and baby carriages and people walking their dogs. So that's something we have been looking at. We were looking at it through our MVP grant program, trying to reduce the impervious surface in some of those neighborhoods, in some of those streets. We do have a couple roads on the pavement list either this year or next year that have 30 feet of paved surface with sidewalks on both sides. So we're going to start to figure out how to approach those neighborhoods, let the residents know that we have to take a look at removing sidewalk from one side of those streets, putting grass back. With all the flooding, hot topic, with all the flooding that we're having right now, that MVP program was really geared towards preventing some of this flooding that we're having and getting the water back in the ground where it falls, instead of running to the low spots and causing the problems that we've been having this summer.
So just thinking out loud, presumably taking that 72 down by some amount of miles,
Yeah.
it's cheaper to dig up the pavement and flip it over and plant some seed than it is to.
And one of the issues too with that is, again, the way the specs were when they were building those subdivisions, they planted the trees in that 3-foot grass strip between the curbing and the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And in order to repair those sidewalks, we're gonna have to cut the trees down to remove that root structure. So now we're removing the trees, which are able to soak up that water that we want to put back in the ground. So that is something we've been talking about and looking at, and are going to continue to work on, and kind of part of our sidewalk master plan as far as where we can remove sidewalks,
Yeah,
put that
okay,
lumen
great.
seed back. So to get into the survey itself, some of the questions that we asked, first one, do you feel that Foxborough meets your access to sidewalks and walkability? Pretty simple, yes or no. We have, I'm blocked. About 25% of the people said yes, we are meeting their needs, and 75% of the people that responded said no, we are not. So that was, out of the 222 people that answered, only 25% felt like we are meeting their needs in town.
But 41 skipped, which is a
41
big
did skip
piece
it.
of.
Yeah. Kind of the second component of that question was, really give us your opinion, like in words, put some text together. Some said the bigger the words, we had too many sidewalks. They're dangerous. They're broken. It's dangerous to walk down the roads. The South Street trees are, I believe, some of the complaints there that they're low hanging over the sidewalks, or you're ducking as you're walking down portions of the South Street sidewalks. The sidewalks are narrow. Some of these some of these locations, Cocasset Street, it's only a 3-foot wide sidewalk. It's broken. It's falling apart. So that kind of, gives you kind of a snapshot of what people were saying about the sidewalks in town and not meeting their walkability needs within the town.
Chris,
Yep.
who's responsible for trimming the trees that overhang the sidewalks if they're on
We
town
do that
property?
within the highway division and the tree and park division split
Right.
that. Really gets to be who has
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, because this is a bad year for that. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Everything is growing
Right.
very quickly.
Homeowner be doing that, though? What's, like, whose responsibility is it?
That's what I'm
So-
asking,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah, most of the trees, the street trees, that are within the town layout, we're responsible for them. Even if they're on private property and they're overhanging the public property, we have the right to go in and trim those trees and raise them up. We were actually just talking with the highway supervisor. He was mentioning that he's probably going to jump into that. It's a good rainy day job. Usually we'll wait until getting into the winter season when we know the snow is going to be dropping those branches lower. But he's noticing as he's driving around town, just the 1-ton truck he's driving around, and he's starting to hit some of these branches. So he's got his list going, and as we see them, we're going to start to work on that around town.
And Chris, sometimes it's not even trees, it's just like bushes in people's yards, or like sometimes it's not even a big tree like that.
Yeah, and there are cases where somebody's got a bush on the corner of their lot or have put a fence up. They're strictly on private property. We don't have the right to go on private property to do that trimming, but once it carries over into the public right of way, then we have the right to go in there.
And there's no problem with the homeowner doing the trimming?
Nope, they can do that too, yeah. A lot of times they'll call if there's something that they'll look for us to do it first. If it falls within our responsibilities, we will. Sometimes we'll push back on them if it's, really on their property and, not something that's impacting the public right of way. We will push back, but.
Okay.
So another question, again, it seems like a lot of people skipped most of these questions just to get to probably the next question, which was, do you want us to spend more money in town on sidewalks? But, this question I think was important for the group. Would access to safe maintained sidewalks affect your decision to live in Foxborough long-term? Over 60% of the people that responded said yes, that if they had safe maintained sidewalks, they would be more willing to live here, and it's going to have an impact on their decision to stay here. Less than 40% said that it does not have an impact on whether they're going to stay or not. This was rank the choices as to what we should be focusing on for this infrastructure investment. The majority, it was kind of split between maintaining existing infrastructure and expanding. So I think, a lot of people want to see us do both. It's split. They want to see us expand the network, which that's usually the more expensive piece. Whereas if we're replacing existing sidewalk, we know what that square footage cost is. There are a lot of unknowns when we get into putting a new sidewalk in place, similar to what we talked about on South Street a couple of years ago. We're designing the sidewalk on Cocasset Street now that we received funding for at town meeting last year. So we're waiting on that design to figure out what the unknowns are, making sure that we're following everything in the public right of way, that we're not encroaching on anybody's property. And then handful of people wanted to see safety improvements around town, similar to like the pedestrian crossing signs we have around the common, and then improving the trail network in town as well. So this was the big question, and even 44 people skipped this one too. So the town is exploring multiple ways to fund the project, how would you be willing to support an increase, would you be willing to support an increase to your tax revenue through a bond or other issuance as a solution to the issue? And almost 60% said no, a little over 40% said yes. So again, fairly close decision on that, as far as didn't really give us the home run of everybody being, yes, we're ready to spend more money, or everybody, being dead set against it. So it's a kind of didn't really give us the answer we were looking for, but that's what the public told us. So some of the funding mechanisms, the programs that are out there, to help us as grants to do some of this work, the Safe Routes to School program is a big one. They tend to have more frequent funding than the Complete Streets projects do. Complete Streets, you have a limit. I think we're capped at $400,000, and it's like every other year that we can apply. Safe Routes to School is a pretty consistent grant program, and every time you finish spending your grant, you can apply for another project. Does focus around the schools, can add in the Hawk, the YMCA is also a member, and as part of this program, the health director was applying as well to try to get some more insight into this grant program. So a lot of this falls on the schools to actually show that they're working on improving their walkability to the schools, trying to entice the families and the kids to ride their bikes and to walk to schools, so that they're showing a need for those sidewalk improvements before they'll actually grant that funding. But all the schools, 3 elementary schools are all involved, as well as the charter school. The Complete Streets program, again, $400,000. It's not an every year grant. There are limits. We have one project going on right now that's at East and Cocassa Street. So that includes not only the intersection redesign, but it includes some walkability, changing the sidewalk, the crosswalk location over there, making that ADA accessible. So those are all things that they were looking for and awarded us the grant for. We looked at Community Preservation Act. Unfortunately, this is something that the town would decide to move forward with, although we're not able to use it for public sidewalks. It would be more private property, affordable housing units, open space, public recreation area. They're not looking for it to be used on sidewalks.
That's not one of our trails, is it? I've never seen that before.
No.
I don't think that one is.
No. I would remember that.
Yeah. Looks nice though.
I know, that's so cool.
So really that kind of wraps up, the survey that we put together. Again, we were hoping for a lot of participation. 220, active responses throughout was not really our goal. We have talked about potentially putting it back out now that school is back in session. That's going to be fresh on people's minds again. We're working within the Leadership Matters program to try to finalize this project for the team. And then it's really looking at the next steps in town as far as how we move forward with getting dedicated funding or annual funding for sidewalk improvements. So we've talked internally. There was talk last year about a bond. Obviously, that's kind of a split vote at the moment. But really, it's up to the board at this point in time to say, yes, we're willing to support that. We can bring that forward in our budgeted process. But to really figure out, do we want to move forward with a long-term funding mechanism until we get that meals tax money back from the OPED payments? And we do have some ideas internally as far as how to do that. Any bond issuances, if it's outside of the tax revenue, needs to go both to town meeting for a vote as well as to a ballot vote. So that is something we would have to consider. The other thing is to, potentially slowly build that into the operating budget every year, so that, we start at $100,000 and then we, up that to $200,000 and build a roadway management budget into our annual operating expenses. And it doesn't have to start at 100, but that's something we can, need to really think about. There is clearly a desire for that maintenance and expansion piece. out of the people that did respond. They're looking for it. But it is, really up to, the department and the board to figure out where we go with that program.
Any questions from the board?
Under the category of major rehabilitation, is that an area of priority? Or is it something different?
If we go back,
Right there.
so this really looks at the roadways, major rehabilitation. The way that the engineering firm set these up is those are roads they would consider you tear down and rebuild. You're going to bring in a full depth reclamation. You're going to take all the asphalt as well as everything 1 foot below that, and you're going to rebuild the road. It's not something that we've done in Foxborough. It's very expensive. So it is, a lot of times it's not the main roads, it's, subdivision roads. We're able to take the top 1.5 inches of asphalt off, give it a new riding surface, and because of their low traffic roadways, they're gonna last 12 to 15 years before we have to go back in there. So that's usually where those full depth roads are, at least in the 10 years I've been looking at the Foxborough roads, they're all in those private subdivision, or the subdivision developments. And it's not always doing the worst roads first. That may be kind of where you were going.
Right.
With the funding that we have, we're trying to spread that out as far as we can. So we're doing pavement preservation, we're doing that routine maintenance, the crack sealing. We've done a lot of the Cape Seal roadway projects in town, the rubber chip seal. Those are, it's a surface treatment. It's meant to just hold the road together 5 to 10 years. We've been getting 10 plus out of some of those methods. And I think they've done well. Unfortunately, when you do them once, you can't do them again. So then you're kind of following down that line, and the next repair is going to be more expensive.
Thank you.
I was gonna say, I just think it kicks it off, more to come. It would be nice to see more people respond to the survey. I think if it's 218 and 40 people didn't respond, it makes it a little bit tough. And then just balancing, what do we want versus what do we want to pay for, and coming up with a plan.
Yeah, it was such a hot topic that you think more people would have responded, at town meeting, so.
You can come up.
Also, Chris, is it, not that you would know this, but where with the OPEB, is it 2032 that we're expected to be?
Somewhere
Around
in the early
there.
third,
And then once we meet that, it'll.
32.
We'll always have to pay something, won't we? Because, more people are retiring and stuff like that, but, so you're, oh, that's a good, yeah. Oh, Marie.
Good thing I stayed. So right now we're contributing $1,064,000 each year. Once your liability is fully funded, you will have an ongoing cost, but it won't be anywhere near that million. It really depends on your staffing at that time and the retirees that you have in the system. The other piece is once we've fully funded the pension liability. Right now we're paying about $6 million a year. That number is going to drop drastically, and the intent is to shift that money over to pay down the OPEB faster. But what Chris was saying earlier with sort of building a bridge to when that happens is by doing a 10-year bond issuance for roads and sidewalks to really get them, $10 million to tackle a lot of these projects. And once you've paid off that bond, you'll get to the point where your pension and OPEB are fully funded, and you'll have millions of dollars to play with then. And something we'll be exploring too is adding some funding to the budget. 'Cause, this is an ongoing yearly cost. So we could start building money into the budget, but obviously there's $100,000 is not going to do much for you. So we really should look at, in my opinion, a 10-year bond issuance to sort of get us to that point.
So when would you want to make a presentation if you wanted to at least bring it to the town, or maybe bringing it to town meeting? Is that something we would do at the budget meetings in December? Is it something you would do beforehand? Is it
We could make it part of the financial summit
summit?
in December. We could come with some numbers, like what it would cost the average taxpayer for the bond issuance. And sort of prepare and see what, as we're going through the budget process with the projections and such, determine what we have, the room that we have available in the operating budget to create a yearly budget, but also, communicate the cost of doing a bond issuance. But we could certainly do that at the summit. And then, as Chris mentioned, for a debt exclusion, which it would have to be a debt exclusion, because the town does not have the capacity to do another project from within, like we did with this building and the Burrell school project. It would have to go to the ballot, and town meeting would need to approve as well. Something that we can do, say, for example, if this went to the spring town meeting, we could potentially go out to bond either that summer or later in the fall, and have some money shortly after that to start to really tackle these projects.
So Marie, is it roughly 9 to 10 years before we would see any real money coming from the meals tax towards the roads? Roughly 9, 10 years?
Yeah, we're actually, right now, we're in the middle of, our actuarial firm is working on the fiscal year 23 OPEB valuation. This study will reflect the catch-up payments that we made recently. So I think once we get this report, we'll really be able to tell when.
Better idea.
Yeah, we'll have a better idea. And then the pension right now, it's looking like it will be fully funded in 2029. The last OPEB valuation said that OPEB would be fully funded by 2032, but we might see that number now, or that year is now maybe 2030, depending on the results of the study. Obviously, if your investments are doing very well too, that helps you.
Would the board be interested in hearing a proposal for a debt exclusion?
Yeah, I can work with our financial advisors.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, our
Okay.
financial advisors, they'll look at the market and determine when is a good time. They can give you a good estimate on what it costs right now to do a bond issuance. We can get you some numbers for that, for the summit.
Let's do it for the summit. All right, great. And thank you, Marie. So just while you're here and we're talking roads, just fill us in on Mechanic Street.
Do we want to go back to?
Oh, I apologize. Yeah, you came up for a second. Thank you. Is there a mic there? Okay.
Nancy Morrison, South Grove Street. We're talking sidewalks, repairing, fixing. What about getting a new sidewalk? We've been asking for sidewalks for over 50 years. We don't have any sidewalks. We're a main throughway for Rhode Island traffic, the casino traffic in Plainville, the stadium traffic. When the 495 and 95 gets backed up, they come down South Grove Street. We have older people, we have babies in carriages, we have pets, dogs, people walking. It's a death trap. So who do you have to know to get on that list to get new sidewalks? I've been calling, I did the survey, no response. So what do you have to do?
So it really comes down to a funding mechanism.
We've been hearing that for over 50 years.
Right, so I think.
And you're fixing sidewalks in town before you put new ones in. We need sidewalks. We pay the same taxes as everybody else, and we don't have any sidewalks. We've had telephone poles hit, we've lost power, we've had trees hit. I've almost gotten hit a few times. My neighbors have almost got hit. The police did, they did a survey. We had a post put on one of the trees. An average speeding rate is 4%. We're at 11. That's how fast the traffic is on my street. I'm telling you this, it's dangerous. Something's gonna happen.
I just wanted to point out, do folks know where South Grove Street is?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm surprised because we're a forgotten street.
Because you go, yeah, you're,
Of Plainville and Mansfield.
right.
And like I said, we get Rhode Island traffic, we get stadium traffic, we have Home Depot traffic, we have Plainville traffic, casino traffic. GPS takes 18-wheelers down the street. We have new apartment buildings going up. The GPSs are taking them directly down my street,
And so do they come from Tremont Street in Mansfield, or
Yes.
West Street, or both?
all over.
Okay.
106,
Yeah.
495, 95, Route 1.
Nancy, when I remember, when did the police do that study for you guys?
It was maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay, that's,
We're at 11%.
Yeah.
That's 3 times higher than normal.
and then once that study's done, Chris, did that information go to you, or?
I don't
Were you
recall
already
seeing it.
DPW director? It was Roger probably was still here. You were probably
Roger was
still,
still
you were
here,
still, you
yeah.
were here, but.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing it. I can certainly talk to the police department on it.
I got a
Didn't
copy
get
of
it.
it.
Yeah, I remember, maybe
Yeah.
when we were, do you remember when we were at AdCom, maybe listening to something about it? I don't know why that would be from that, but I remember the study.
Yeah.
I do remember.
And when I say bad, I mean, we've been there 25 years. Traffic is incredible. It's gotten so bad,
So how, speed-wise, or volume, or?
everything. I mean, kids now are riding down the street. I look out my window and I'm afraid to look because something is gonna happen.
So what is
and-
on either side of the road? Is it?
I'm sorry?
Is it, what's on either side of the road?
Nothing. There's, I mean, just one sidewalk, just a partial sidewalk, anything. I haven't even gotten up, we've had a berm broken for 2 years, we can't even get that fixed.
Is it a thinner road,
When
a
you
tight
turn
road?
off, when you turn off 106.
Yeah.
You take a left over the bridge, which is also another danger zone. We need some kind of a flashing light because just recently a car got hit. When you turn off
Going out of
South
North.
Grove onto 106,
Okay.
it's the bridge right there. People don't know there's a street. We just recently had an accident.
They don't
A
know
car
there's
hit.
North Grove or South Grove?
Well, on 106, when
Yeah.
you're coming from North Grove,
Yep.
you take the bridge.
Yeah, okay.
People don't know there's a South Grove Street.
Oh, I see.
And they accelerate, and somebody just recently got hit coming out of South Grove.
I gotcha.
I mean, it's just, it's terrible. It's bad.
I want to drive down and just take a look.
When you-
Yeah, I
when you-
think
when you
North
come
Grove,
off-
South Grove, I mean, West Street, there's a lot of streets that people walk on that are narrow, and
When you come off 106, it's wide, but then it narrows right before my house.
Okay.
But, I mean, we've done petitions. People are willing to give up however many feet in front of their house just to put a sidewalk in. Like I said, for over 50 years, before me, it was somebody else. 50 years, we've been trying to get sidewalks, and the traffic is getting worse and worse.
I think ultimately, you know, if we push this bond issue through and, you know, the problem is, you know, the little bit of funds we have are being stretched as much as possible.
Well,
But maybe
but
maybe this bond issue where we can get $10 million.
Well, these other sidewalks are getting fixed, which means to me, they already had sidewalks. Maybe put sidewalks into people that don't have them yet. I mean, that would be the fair thing to do. We pay the same taxes as the rest of the town. We are not getting the services.
Yeah, that was kind of where I was going with my other question. I really meant it for sidewalks.
Okay.
I mean, is there a way to prioritize the needs here? You know, I mean, Seth talked about, you know, ripping up sidewalks that are no longer needed, you know, so take them out of the equation completely. But are there areas of priority in terms of you have limited funding, negligible funding, so one way of stretching that is to really look at the highest safety risk areas and maybe focus on those as.
or the walkability areas
or the
too, like
walkability,
people are
right,
going.
Right.
Yeah,
I
and
know it's
it-
probably a big undertaking, but it might be a way of,
Yeah, and some of that comes with the ADA transition plan that we've done, and we look at, you know, the heat zone mapping. I think we've presented that in the past, where you're looking at where's the highest concentration of foot traffic, and really it was, you know, it was focused from the Taylor School, up South Street, through the Common, past the Y, up to the Ahern. You know, that was really where our heat mapping showed the most foot traffic, and, you know, kind of looking at dedicating that funding to that area.
Yeah, by
That's
that
with
metric,
existing, but-
South Grove is gonna,
We're just as busy as South Street. I would argue that with anyone. We are
And-
just as busy as South Street. And they have sidewalks on both sides.
Well, the fact that the police took the time to do the study
Well,
and.
because I called them and bugged them.
Yeah, but no, but I mean, and if the results are showing what you said.
Yes.
Chris should be able to, Chris should at least get a hold of that. And I get it, I mean, most likely, you know what? If there's a tiny leak here and a big gush here, what do? We run here, let's just take care of that.
Well, I've
Fix
also,
that,
I've also
and then we
asked
go
for,
there.
I've asked for
Yeah.
speed traps too, and I haven't really seen much of that.
So,
The
yeah, and
town would make a
I
lot
get
of
it.
money just from the speed
There's
traps.
only so much money, but I think Doc might have hit it right there, is if, you know, I think some of the places that we've taken the time to look at, and if the data has come back, that there's a lot of speeding there, and there's people walking on that street, it might just be something for us to, I'm not making any promises, Nance, but
Well, I
it's
think
something to look
Heat
at.
maps have to do with people walking, or does it have to do with cars driving? Just to define-
Walkability.
So the heat maps, when we say the heat maps are up South Street, that's people walking, not cars going up. So,
Well, I'm, like I said, we have both, so.
yeah, no, I just wasn't sure kind of what it looked
Yeah.
at, so
I
just,
mean, over 50 years, I would think we would take, first place, but that's just,
Yeah, I mean, there's a,
Putting in sidewalks as opposed to fixing, original sidewalks. I mean, that's, it just doesn't seem fair to fix them first before we even get any. I mean, I'm scared for our street, for our residents, because, like I say, the traffic has just gotten so much worse,
Okay,
so.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So while we were on the streets, just Mechanic Street, giving the town a little heads up on the flashers that we see on Mechanic.
Sure. So I can just touch base on the projects we have going around quick before we jump into the next topic. So Mechanic Street going towards the Sharon Town line. There are, Mass DOT has a project that just started due to the Sharon Gallery construction. That Sharon Gallery project is finally going. That's across from the Shaw's Plaza, right as you cross over 95. There will be all new signals from the off-ramps, the two off-ramps of 95. Those will both have signals, traffic signals. The Shaw's Plaza and the Sharon Gallery Plaza will have a traffic signal, as well as Gavin's Pond Road in Sharon will also have a traffic signal. So there are 4 new traffic
All
signals
within
going.
like 100 yards?
So the expectation is that Sharon Gallery project is going to draw significant traffic increase well beyond what's there now, that getting off of the off-ramps of 95, getting in and out of those 2 plazas in Sharon will become problematic without those traffic signals. So it's a volume, it's a safety issue. Mass DOT owns that stretch of roadway. They've approved this. I would assume it's being funded by the Sharon Gallery project, but that's outside of my purview.
Knowing how much those lights cost,
Yeah.
that was going to be my next question. Who's
Yep.
paying for those?
Yeah, so it's either Mass DOT or it's the Sharon Gallery project, one or the other. So that's the project on Mechanic Street that just got underway. It's been in the works. If you've seen that Sharon Gallery billboard, off the highway or right here to get off 95, it's been there for 15, 20 years now.
It is.
So they're finally going. East Street and Cocassa Street is underway. So they've begun relaying the curbing at that intersection, trying to straighten out that intersection at East and Cocassa. The rain doesn't help, but they're working away. They're trying to get done. Their initial goal was 4 weeks. They've certainly lost a few days here and there. They're still hoping by the end of the month they'll have that intersection done and reopened with the new design. The water main project on South Street from Sprague Road all the way up to Witch Pond down 106. They have come off of Sprague Road. They are on South Street now. They are working to just have 1 lane closure from 7 to 3, 7 to 4 on a daily basis, so the traffic will maintain its normal flow, just a little bit slower at times when they get to where they're working. So they just came off of Sprague Road. Probably Friday was their first day on South Street, so they'll start working their way up to 495, go up and over 495, all the way down to 106, and we are expecting that to be a 12 to 18 month project,
and
depending
is
on
that
weather.
all a private contractor, kind of like West Street was?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So PJ Hayes is the contractor that won that bid. So he has, that full project. It's one contract, the entire length of the project.
And I noticed they don't need a detail on like a street like South Street on those?
So they should have details. They had one day where there were there were no details available.
Okay, that's probably the day I drove by, okay.
They worked, just off the edge of the road. They, when they needed to, they put their own employees out there to direct traffic. But working with the police department, we are working to have that project filled for police details first. One of the other projects ongoing that is taking those police details is Eversource Gas Company. They are working in the Linda, Walter, Webb, Connie, Carmine neighborhood, replacing that entire gas main network, which will include all the services as well. So they've been putting in for, I think, 4 police details a day. Much quieter neighborhood, much quieter streets. Don't really need 4 over there. So working with the sergeants and the lieutenants in the police department, they're filling that South Street and the Eastern Caucasus Street first for the safety factor. So that's the other project, the gas main project. So there's kind of 4 major construction projects going on right now.
Thank you, Chris.
Chris, is one of those lights going to be pulling out of Sharon Woods too, or no, or just at the?
Yep,
the
Gavin's Pond
Gavin's
Road,
Pond
yeah.
Road.
Okay,
Yep.
all right, perfect. And question about something, till it's a problem, but will it, at some point, obviously, when we have a stadium event, will there be something like they do kind of on Route 1 where maybe they have a police officer with the lights or something like that? Because that area backs way up just a normal, like even a concert or something, not even just a game, a concert, with no
Traffic on the
lights.
highway.
Yeah, that's what I mean, it's just gonna, everything's gonna back up. Will they, I mean, I know, that's
Yeah,
not your call, I'm just curious if you've heard anything talk about, like, whether, like, they'll look at some of the, like, they'll do a traffic study, not us, or something, just to see.
Yeah, I mean, right now, they don't do anything at the Oak and Mechanic Street intersection. So I believe that before and after games, they'll let them run
Yeah.
based
Well,
on
I'm
the
saying now
timing.
you're gonna be stopping the traffic on Mechanic Street, well, that technically is Main Street, that area, but you'll be stopping traffic now. So it's not just normal traffic waiting to come in and out, so, I mean, that's gonna create, like, same thing, if there's a light coming off and on ramps,
Yep.
it's same thing, everything's just gonna back up and,
Yeah.
not our
I think
problem, I
when-
guess I was just asking.
Yeah, probably better for
out
the
of
police chief or
out of
something.
curiosity, you know?
Yeah, so we'll have to look at it when the time comes.
Yeah.
Thanks. Next up.
All right, so I'm still here?
Yes.
They have, something we're looking to do in the DPW, we're looking to kind of make a structural change in the organization, looking to create an assistant director position that I would combine with the town engineer role. So it would be a combined position, promotion for our existing town engineer. Kind of similar to some of the other departments within town. Police, fire, finance, they all have, assistant police chief, fire chief, assistant finance director. Really to help with, primarily have a second in command that still has day-to-day operational duties. He will still function as the town engineer, but really take some of that day-to-day weight off of my desk so that I can focus on some of the other strategic planning in the department and for the town. So some of the things we, in talking with my own internal staff, talking through with Paige and Mary Beth, we did meet with Personnel Wage Board last week. Some of my reasoning for bringing this forward, we've seen a 20% increase in growth in staffing over the last 10 years since the DPW was created. So we've grown from 37 positions to 44 positions. So outside of the school department, we are the biggest department in town. We have an annual operating budget, which includes water and sewer enterprise funding of over $9 million. And looking at short-term infrastructure projects in the next 2 to 3 years, we have roughly $40 million worth of infrastructure work just in the next 36 months. That includes state grant funding, federal grant funding, ARPA money, SRF, state revolving funds, as well as enterprise water and sewer funding, potential local capital funds for the DPW expansion project. The grants, the ARPA money, SRF funding have some pretty cumbersome paperwork to make sure that we get every penny that we spend back. And, one of the short-term needs is to have the ability to focus on that paperwork to make sure that every penny that we spend on those projects we're getting back. Because we don't want the town on the hook for any of that infrastructure work that Paige has worked so hard to get grant funding for.
And then I hand it to him.
So just a little bit more about the position. As I said, we're looking to combine it with an existing position. So there's no incremental headcount. We're not adding a body here. This is taking an existing staff member, promoting them, giving them day-to-day operation. So the only real cost here is, the only cost is the change in salary. So depending on where this position falls on the pay scale, we're looking at nothing more than $14,000 worth of funding to fund this change in position, which is split up between water enterprise, sewer enterprise, and the general fund. So it's really split 3 ways. Haven't figured out the final split with Marie and Paige yet, but we'll work on that, assuming, Paige makes this decision final after tonight. This is then something we would add into the FY25 budget moving forward and have this, funded for future fiscal years. It is something we have funding available. We are working through a hiring process right now. We've recently hired 5 people now within the DPW. So going through the first few months of the fiscal year, we have salary savings that we have not spent. So we're able to fit this within our existing budget for this fiscal year. Has been discussed with Water and Sewer Commission members as kind of the keeper of the enterprise funding. They are supportive of this change as well, and that change in use for their funding. So, really looking at, the change in the last decade, the span of control for the DPW director really is just too much for one person to handle and manage. In reality, I was doing that while Roger was the director here. So when Bob Swanson retired, I was hired as the town engineer, but knowing my path forward, I kind of took on as much as I could. I had the highway supervisor, tree and park supervisor, equipment manager. They were coming to me directly as the town engineer, really for my benefit, to make sure that if I was hired as a director, that transition was as seamless as I could be. And really for the last 3.5 years, we haven't made that switch to Lance as the town engineer because he's the town engineer and we've had him focusing on that job function. So really trying to make that position what it should be and create it as a assistant director with the town engineer responsibilities. Really what that'll do is help me focus on something, like I said, the strategic planning that I'd like to work on, the grant spending and collection of that revenue. We have OSHA regulations that have been adopted by DLS with the state that we need to follow. And I'm not only responsible for the DPW employees for that, but I have been designated and appointed since I was promoted to the DPW director as the OSHA representative for the entire town. So, something I haven't been able to do is to work with the other departments to make sure that the town is meeting all of those OSHA regulations. Everything from my employees who are in heavy equipment every day to crossing guards have to follow OSHA standards. So those are things that, I haven't been able to, as the representative, actually focus on with the current workload. So, kind of to wrap up, in my mind, it's kind of a minor change financially, but it is pretty important for me to be able to make this structural change. And I think it would be pretty drastic for my workload and for Lance's workload in the department and the town. Looking to follow what we saw as, kind of a process where police and fire came forward with a non-union salary wage change a couple months ago, along with I think it was Lee McCarthy's position, moving that on that same pay scale, adjusting that for her. They went through personal board first and then came to the select board for kind of approval. Working with Paige and Mary Beth kind of felt like that was the right process for us to move this forward. So that's where I am.
If I could chime in, because I think it's important I speak here. Just so the board's clear, this is actually my decision as the town manager, so I just want to be clear. But that being said, I am acting, and I wanted to make sure this board was aware of it and the public was aware of it. Where your rights stand is the right to veto the reorganization. So that's where you come into play. We'll work out the finance, as we said, it's absorbed within the budget this year, and we were successfully able to get that position out of the union, which is something to be proud of as well. So why now? Why would I do this right now when I'm acting? It actually is kind of Marie's fault. Not really, but, and, at the end of June, we've gotten a lot of grant funding of late. And as Chris said, he's got $40 million in construction projects in the near term. A lot of this with Walnut Street and all the grant fundings we've been getting, like I said, like he said, the paperwork is overwhelming and the procurement is overwhelming. Marie contacted me at the end of June and said, hey, we have this reimbursement. And Chris does a phenomenal job. He really does. But I was worried at that moment. It hit me like that. Poor Chris is like carrying all of this, and if something doesn't get submitted by June 30th, then we risk not being reimbursed. Everything we do is up front, and then we need to get it back. Marie and I actually spoke about it back then. It was just, Chris has his hands full. I mean, when you think of what his job is overseeing, everything from trash removal, water line breaks, tree and parks, construction project. I mean, it's such a broad spectrum, and he has 44 employees. So it really is overwhelming. And honestly, I'm just worried about Chris, and his ability. And then, thereafter, the town is, if he breaks, the whole system breaks, and it's a lot on him. And if he forgets a reimbursement of $500,000, not that Marie would ever let that happen, but again, things happen. There's a lot of moving parts over there. So that's why when we talked about the reorganization, when I had my meeting with Chris, we kind of talked about how can we support the DPW? How can we do this? And it was clear that it was kind of, the time was now. Chris is at a point where he has a surplus built up because he's been running 6 short. He's not going to fill a position to try to keep this, to keep the head count and try to reorganize. So that's why now, and retention is so important. I think Mary Beth can speak to that. I believe Rentham had this assistant DPW position open for 1.5 years. So we want to make sure too that we don't lose any employees out of burnout. It's really hard to fill it, and Chris really is a key operator here in this town, and we need to make sure this guy is functioning on all cylinders. So that's the why, and hopefully you understand that. I wasn't trying to grab too many reins, but I also didn't want to risk any loss over in the DPW department, and make sure that we're capturing every penny of grants that we're submitting for, or spending, shall I say.
So Mary Beth, so basically bottom line is to switch from that, whether we call it a step or a grade, from the 9 to 11, to move to non-union, is an annual cost of $14,000?
Well, depending on where the placement is. The first year it's absorbed in the budget. The next year, Chris would have to, budget for the increase. But this year, there's.
Yes, but I mean,
Between 11 and 13.
It's an annual change of salary.
Yes.
So
$14,000.
I agree with Stephanie that it's, regardless of whether there's money in the budget, what she's talking about is the incremental cost
Right.
for 20, for this year and then for the full year.
Yeah.
So that's really the real hard numbers.
Yeah.
Incremental cost is what.
Yeah, we're only 3 years into, 3 years, so we're only 3 months into this budget, so it's not like, okay, well, its cost is $14,000 for this year, but next year it's gonna be.
The annual cost, so
Annual cost is gonna be
from
14.
his salary at the start of this fiscal year.
To move those two, I guess it's step
For
grade or
if we
whatever.
were to have done it effective
Yeah.
July 1st, it's a $14,000 annual cost.
Yeah.
And it's actually slightly less
If
than
I
that.
may just, having
13,809.
having been away from here for a few years now, and consulting and working in other communities, just the cost of, if the position is vacant and you're trying to recruit for this position, we have a really qualified employee. I mean, I haven't been here with that employee, so I don't have a personal note, but I hear from other towns that it's a very well sought after town engineer, professional engineer, which are really hard to come by. We already have one. To recruit for that, you're going to lose so much money and time if you lose that employee and not promote a really qualified employee. We, Paige alluded to it in Rentham, we had posted up 3 times for an assistant DPW director, even raising the salary higher than, the market, and we just couldn't do it. And I called around to a lot of my colleagues saying, what am I doing wrong? What's going on here? And it was, most people are promoting from within. There are not a lot of qualified people. And the number of PEs that apply for positions, if you have 20 applicants, you're lucky if one is a professional engineer. So I just think, yeah, there'll be a cost in your budget, but the cost to burn out a director and to recruit, you may never find somebody, and you could be in a hole with your projects.
I think we were just looking for the annualized cost, which you said 14,000.
Yeah.
That was a number, no additional benefit costs. It's a good proposal.
And would we have to then approve, and the Personnel Board approve the new non-union, what's it called? The non-union managerial pay plan to add that position on there? So we would have to do that, though, as a board, from what, unless I'm misunderstanding
So
it.
the current pay plan that you approved a couple of months ago, it would fit in with the other department.
Okay, so we wouldn't have to, we would just slide it in, then we wouldn't have to like reapprove it or anything like that?
Yeah, it would be with, an adjustment. I don't know if that's already been posted with the town clerk. That's usually what happens.
The original pay plan
Yeah.
has, yes.
Yeah, the
yes.
7/19/23 was
Yes,
posted.
yes.
So, it would fit in,
Okay, so we
in
don't
the
have to do
job.
anything to put a new job in there?
I don't believe so.
I think we discussed it with the Personnel and Wage Board. We talked about what
Yep.
step it would be on that chart.
But we named the positions on the chart, so we'd be adding that position, so that wouldn't.
Right, it would be in the job family of an
Okay.
assistant
Okay.
department head. And just to comment on the job description, it's like my passion in my world, and it's a really very well-done job description. I think it encompasses all of the work and certainly warrants the placement.
Right, and if by chance, down the road, Lance decided to leave, if we were to replace him, we would be looking for somebody who was an engineer and would be able to be your assistant. So
Yes.
we would be looking just to replace exactly what Lance is gonna become. And right now, you think you're gonna try to absorb it some through water and some through your budget?
Yeah, so his position is currently split between the 2 enterprise budgets and the general fund. It was heavier on the water and sewer side previously. This would give him more responsibility over the general fund staffing divisions. So we haven't talked about what that looks like, for a future split, but that's something that, assuming, again, tonight went well and Paige finalized this, that we would discuss with Marie. We have a lot of my positions split between the 3 divisions. Our GIS staff is split, so we have a lot of them that are currently split between the 3 funding sources. So this would be just a change in that split.
And I think until you really work with Chris on like projects, whether it's the Uptown parking lot or, the Walnut Street project, like you don't realize how much goes into some of these projects. Like you said, nothing's really easy, even if it's, doing sidewalks, it's putting in all the ADA stuff. So it's just the amount of paperwork and everything that Chris has on his plate, it's amazing. You do a great job keeping up with what you do, given everything that you do, too.
Thank you.
It's a lot.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chris. I think you can go eat now.
I don't think I'm done yet.
Oh, no?
Oh, the warrant.
Oh.
Yeah, we got one more.
I got one more piece of paper.
Okay.
We bundled them, though. We gave them all, everything in a row.
So coming up next, we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago about the potential need for a special town meeting, and I'll let Paige talk about the meeting and why we're decided to go forward with one.
Sure. Well, we were all hoping not to have a special town meeting this year. We were really, really hoping. But Bill Yukna, being the responsible permanent building committee chair that he is, has been keeping an eye on the DPW building and that whole project. Now, if you recall, funding has already been passed to forward the design of the expansion. But we all, if anybody's driven by there, you know that the garage itself is in rough shape, and that's always needed some updates. So after talking to Bill, it became clear that there was a two-prong issue. One, it's going to be financially beneficial to move the renovate, or sorry, the fixing of the existing garage and keeping it separate from the new expansion, because it's actually a rather small project in the world of projects, and we believe that by having it done by, say, a roofing company repairing the roof, and not having it go with the big GC project that will be done down the road for the full expansion, you'd actually get the smaller entities able to bid without the higher carrying costs. So I believe it was estimated somewhere around $150,000 in savings. But the more urgent reason to push it forward is that Bill was concerned that the facility might not make it through the winter, in particular the boiler and the roof. So he was very worried that we could end up, because we were pushing for a special town meeting maybe in January, so we could do some more financial things. Because the problem with doing a town meeting in October is the free cash isn't going to be closed out. So with the DOR's recent cracking down on holding town meetings too close to the free cash, we aren't able to hold another town meeting. We're doing in October with no cash sort of transactions, or we'd have to wait till January. But again, Bill was very concerned that waiting till January, we could run the risk of the boiler failing or the roof failing, and then you're spending all sorts of money in an emergency situation. And as he pointed out, there is no place for the DPW garage to go. If that fails, then Foxborough's in trouble. So for that reason, we convened a meeting, with, and we invited Doc, but we had Frank Spillane, the moderator, the town clerk, we had Bill Yukna, we had finance there. We all got around a Zoom room, and we talked it through. And even though knowing it would be possibly just a single article, which it turned out we added one more, but Bill was very, very strong in the urgency of moving this forward. And I think Chris could speak to that more. But I will say that we did, ironically, during the Zoom meeting, I got an email from Mark Craig, who had an article that did not involve free cash, that had to do with the revolving count. And he said, I think I could, if you end up having a town meeting this fall, which he had no idea we were in this meeting, I think I could get seniors to come to this meeting, because that was the one thing we were talking about, is how do you get people to come for a single issue? So when we heard that, we kind of said, all right, if you can get the folks in, we're going to give it a shot. We really do think it's important. And then I'll hand it over to Chris on, I kind of stole all your thunder. But if you have any sort of details that you and Bill Yukna discussed.
Yeah, so, similar to what we did previously with the design funding for the expansion, there's leftover money from the Borough School project that, because it was issued through a bond, can only be reallocated at a town meeting to another building project. So, previously we took almost $800,000, dedicated that to the design of the expansion. He still has, at the moment, $400,000 to $500,000 that he is comfortable releasing from the Borough School project. He thinks he probably has, closer to $600,000, but isn't ready to release all of it yet. So, looking at some of the major projects, and again, this is a cost savings where, as the town, able to act as the general contractor, piece these projects together separately to complete this without having to pay that overhead of just one GC doing all of it. So looking at the boiler plant, the facilities group has looked at it. It's beyond its useful life. Parts, if we can get them to repair it, are going to be very expensive, and that's if we can get them. Looking to replace it with a high efficiency boiler sized for the building. And then also looking to run that through the Mass Save program. So through the state, we're actually able to get grant funding of up to $100,000 to do that energy efficiency stuff, similar to homeowners are able to do. The towns are able to take advantage of something similar at the municipal level. But looking for, $100,000 to replace the boiler. Just so happens the AC, is part of that, where The ACs froze on us the other day and started leaking water from the second floor of the building down into the mechanics office space on parts and lighting fixtures and everything else. So that is currently just off and would be part of this upgrade as well. The roof replacement is one of the big things for this building. It's a flat roof. It has solar panels on it that are not active because they've caught on fire twice. So those would just be removed. We would not replace those solar panels. But that roofing, we would upgrade the insulation, go with a white PVC roofing, all new flashing and commercially sized gutters and downspouts. You know, there was a stretch where there were no downspouts on that building, and it was eroding the block structure on the outside just from running from the roof level down to the ground. Also looking at repointing all of the exterior masonry of that building. It's a block structure. We did have Weston and Sampson look at that for us when we were looking at the renovation, expansion, knocking it down, what were options. They said the thing's built like a tank. The amount of concrete and steel in that block structure, it was well built and just needs some, you know, surface treatments on the outside. So looking at that, looking at painting it after we do that, and then starting to look at the garage doors, the walk-through doors. Again, similar to what we saw with the fire department. Garage doors, when they go wrong, and all of a sudden you're either stuck in the building or stuck out of the building. So, you know, looking at spending the remainder of that on garage doors, obviously with the mindset of some of that space may get repurposed to a different use in the future. So, you know, something like the garage doors in the middle of the building, if we're going to repurpose that space for locker room or, you know, a break room or, you know, whatever we might repurpose for, we may not need garage doors on that. So we'll kind of hold off on that space until we, you know, get through a full renovation down the road. And there's always electrical work in that building that needs to be done. It was buried in the concrete floor. So anytime we have an electrical issue, there's really no way to fix it without running it overhead. It's just been getting pieced together for the last 40 years. So, you know, at the moment we're looking at, you know, roughly $450,000 to reallocate from the borough school project to this renovation work. Looking at, you know, an October 16th town meeting is where we are. We've talked to, I talked to Mike Brown about advisory committee having a meeting on September 27th. If we can do it in one night, do it in one night. If we need October 4th for a second night, we can do it a second meeting on October 4th so that they get 2 cracks at it if they want. As well as coming back here in 2 weeks to let you guys digest and have a second chance for questions. And Bill will be here at that meeting on the 26th as well, so can help answer any additional questions.
Yeah, so basically, it is rather quick. You'd need to open the warrant tonight, and then we'd need to close the warrant at the next meeting. And then it has to be posted right away to get that 14 days in. So it is a very quick turnaround. I should go over the second article, has to do with revolving funds, and it has to do for the Council on Aging. They want to be able to pay some of their part-time workers out of the revolving account, and that's not the way it's currently structured. So it would not be anything to do with current employees over there. It's a different level. So that would be that, and it's all within their existing revolving or their revolving account plan, not within the general fund. So. Oh, yeah, Mark Craig is actually online. Maybe I forgot about that. I did have him zoom in. Hi, Mark.
Hey, good morning. Looked like you took a nap.
Morning. Good afternoon. Good evening.
It looked like you took a nap.
Not at all.
So Mark,
Yeah,
you
so
could probably do a better job.
it's basically
Go ahead, I was
it's
going to say you
basically
could probably do a
adjusting
better
the
job.
revolving account to very similar to what the recreation revolving is. The biggest complaint about the senior center is limited hours. Seniors are working late into their 60s and 70s. Would love to be open on Saturday mornings or Friday afternoons, but we can't do that with the existing budget. So would love to be able to use some money coming in from programs to pay for staff to have the building open, but then still run subcontractor type programs like we do now.
So that's the second article.
Any questions before I open this warrant? No?
Thanks, Mark.
All All right, so motion to open the October 16th, 2023 special town meeting warrant.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Good. It's open.
All right.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. All right. Change of manager, Fat Tuesday, at 26 Patriot Place.
They're both on Zoom.
And they're both on Zoom. And this is a change of manager with an alcohol license change?
Yes.
Okay. All right, hey, welcome. Oh,
Evening, Mr. Chair,
We
members of the
recognize
board.
you.
How are you this evening?
good, how are you?
I can't complain. You know, as much as I enjoy being there in person, I'm not going to complain that tonight I happen to have been home for the DPW presentation.
And you're flying solo.
I am, well, I have Vin Schofield with me, but yes, I don't have a big crew with me tonight.
Well, why don't you introduce yourselves and explain why the change, or about the change?
I will do both. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tom Miller from McDermott, Quilty & Miller in Boston on behalf of the licensee Fat Tuesday. As you said, we're before you tonight on a change of the manager of record for this location. I am joined by Vincent Schofield, the proposed manager of record. Dennis Brewer, who is the current manager of record at this location, has really succeeded within the company and has been offered another opportunity internally and has chosen to take that, which takes him away from this location, which is why we're here tonight. Mr. Schofield has been with the licensee since January. As such, he is familiar with the way in which it operates. The board and the Foxboro community will see no change in the way in which Fat Tuesday is run, with Vin being, so to speak, at the helm here. He has extensive experience in the restaurant industry for more than 30 years, and he's worked for more than 15 in restaurant management, including managing local and national chains, local restaurants and national chains. He is a U.S. citizen. He is TIP certified. As I said, he has extensive experience in the industry. He is familiar with not only the laws of the Commonwealth, but the ABCC's rules and regulations and the Select Board's own rules and regulations. He is also aware, we have talked about the Fox Cares program. He and Dennis have talked about the Fox Cares program, and he's going to be reaching out to Tom Perina at Tavolino to kind of get connected with them. As I said, this is necessitated by really the success of Dennis and this location, the way in which it's run. He is moving on, and you get another successful and experienced and really competent manager in Vin at this location. We want to thank you guys for hearing this tonight, and we're happy to answer any questions you have.
Board have any questions?
I like how you put the ServSafe certification right in the packet. Thank you.
He's
We
done it
try.
once or
Yep.
twice. Any questions from the board?
No, he's been there, has
Yeah.
experience, is certified.
But did you go to Foxborough High at all? Or
God,
Oh,
can't
we
hear
can't
you.
hear you.
Ben. There we go.
that might be
I
on.
don't think for this, are we?
Still in here.
No? Okay.
No
You
vote.
lit up. It looked like we
Audio.
could hear him.
Is this a public hearing? I don't think so. It's not a new one.
I'm just, because I was reading that. Let's put it on the next public hearing, that's what I was asking.
I think he
How's
said
that?
yes anyway.
Okay, thumbs up. We can see thumbs up.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So ask the question again, Seth.
Oh, can we hear, you can, your audio's on, Ben?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. I thought I recognized you from Foxborough growing up.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, class of 87.
Okay, and your sister Kim?
Yep.
Yep.
And yep.
Good to see you again.
All world.
You know, it's a homecoming.
Yep, it is. Good to see you, Ben.
There you go. All right.
See you too, Seth.
All right, so motion to approve the change of manager application for 119 Octane Patriot Place, doing business as Fat Tuesday, from Dennis Brewer to Vincent Schofield.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good luck, Vincent, and welcome back.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it very much.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, so, all right, next one's on me. So we had an open meeting complaint a couple of weeks ago. We passed that through our town attorney. Basically, he's going to write a letter back to the complainant, but it was not the intent to appoint Ms. Duncan from her role as acting assistant town manager to acting town manager without a discussion by the select board in open session and consider it. But problem was her name was not put on the open meeting agenda. And that was what the complainant said. And through legal counsel, her name wasn't put on there just in case there were other considerations of candidates brought forth by the select board. And the other complaint he mentioned was we had abbreviated GFOA. So to remedy this, I'd like to clarify the acronym GFOA stands for the Government Finance Officers Association, and will perform a thorough review of posting meeting agendas going forward to ensure that an oversight such as this, using acronyms without the full expansion, will not occur again. But this will be put in writing back to the complainant.
Our friend in Alabama?
Yes. Yes, it was. All right, having done that, now we're going to be discussing a little bit about the town manager search. We did have a search process review and we sent out a survey as a,
The postmortem.
Postmortem, yes. And do you want to talk about the survey?
Not me.
No, Christina, I'm sorry, I looked at you, but I meant Christina tabulated all the responses. We all got copies of those responses, but just generally, how you sent it out there and what we got back.
Right. So thank you for letting me give you the update on what the results were from this town manager search after action postmortem review. This review goal is just to learn from the select board, town manager search screening committee, and the town staff perspective on what worked well, what didn't work well, lessons learned, and what to change moving forward for this next search. As I said, we had about 20 people respond between the select board members, department heads and staff, and town manager search screening committee members. And I want to thank everybody for giving that input. So the first question we asked is, what did you like or think worked well for the last town manager search? And the overall consensus was that the foundation of the search process, the timeline, the position posting, the community input to form the posting, the screening process by the committee of all the candidates, the variety of candidates. There were people who, we had 4 finalists were 2 town managers, a deputy town manager, and somebody who had served as an interim town manager and a department head.
Chief of staff.
He
was a chief of staff.
Chief of staff, excuse me. Yes, thank you. And brought to the select board. So they liked that. It was well executed. There was a clear position statement. The community input to make that position statement and to form the committee was great. And the variety, of, like I said, of the experience of the final candidates. What wasn't liked? The biggest thing that I saw was that the reference check should be a little bit more informal and gathering unsolicited feedback or references. There was a concern that a thorough enough reference check wasn't done, and that there was indications from staff that there could be an issue of fit were not considered. So getting informal references or informal information from staff connections. There was a perception of bias from the board, having chosen a town manager who previously gave a presentation to the board, as well as a perception of bias from the consultant on the chosen candidate. Another issue was staff was not involved. It was suggested by, I believe, a board member that a candidate, could visit town hall, and that didn't happen this time. So maybe, such as the schools do it, a potential principal candidate will come and visit with the staff. So that could be something to involve staff. So what could we do different? So consider the unsolicited personal references and go a little bit.
Can
Yeah,
I
sure.
go back to the previous one?
Absolutely.
Screening committee was not diverse enough? Was one of the
Yes.
responses that you saw a lot?
Not a lot, but it was one of the it was out of those 3 or 4 that we got. And I think you can see that it was just something that was mentioned, and wanted to make note of that. I believe, and I spoke with Bernie Lynch and just kind of getting some information about the next part of the discussion. And he had said that other towns have done search committees that have a select board member on them. I know we didn't opt to do that this past time, that have a department head or 2 on them. Usually have somebody from the schools, a community member, what else? And just having a varied experience. It seemed like it was a lot of, I think it was 6 men, 1 woman. It was just a lot of past and board committee members, and so just looking to diversify that. And once you decide, I think that one of the decision points tonight would be to decide what you want having a screening committee and what you want the makeup of that to be, and figuring out who those representatives will be, and then putting out a statement and asking people, to apply, and then doing that search, and then deciding how you want to decide on those committee members. And I think it was a suggestion had been made that you could have a couple of the select board members along with, if you decide to have the consultant or an HR person such as Mary Beth, or if we at the point where we're deciding where we have the interim HR manager director hired, which I know Paige will discuss tonight, and just focus on that, and then go to the next part of the process.
Just on the first one, reference check should get more informal or unsolicited references feedback. Does this deal with the issue of references other than those offered by the candidate?
Correct.
Okay.
So getting some more, getting word of mouth, and I think that there's people, staff have professional municipal associations that we can talk to other people. So if we had, talked to different candidates from, or different workers who had worked in the town that the candidates had come from, and just getting some sort of informal background to share with the board, again, on an informal basis, to sort of give you a full, well-rounded picture of, obviously when you put a reference forward, you're going to put your best foot forward, and not that we're looking for skeletons in the closet, but the issue of fit was raised, and so I think that could, an informal sort of feedback would be able to give that fit a better, would just be able to address the fit a little bit better than it was before.
Okay, next.
So just doing different for the search is that consider that unsolicited personal references and do it more in-depth background check. Get involved and get staff perspective. I think there were opportunities where they're able to do a staff day, like I think one of the select board members had said, have the finalists come in and meet with the staff, and have the staff, be able to get a feel for, and then be able to give feedback to the select board, again, informally or formally. And then change or adjust the search facilitator. There had been some comments about the consultant that had done it this time and whether we want to stay with them. You adjust the scope. I know, again, we're talking about that next, but whether that not that person has the full charge of the search, or we limit their scope. One of the suggestions also was that you would get HR or labor counsel to do the background search to remove that bias that was, again, mentioned in previous comments of the consultant. Again, that's perceived. I don't want to make that accusation. And then, and also having, if you have a facilitator be the interim HR director and or somebody else to do another consulting firm, and going from there. So lessons learned is a holistic approach to selecting the best candidate. There were comments that board members and search committee members had really focused on one aspect of a candidate or the candidates, and really trying to look at a very well-balanced person to be town manager. Don't rush the vote. I think that unfortunately we had some scheduling issues and had to do the vote was scheduling the vote for the same night that we had our final interview, and there was a comment that to take some time after that vote, and if that were to happen again, that to push that off into another meeting, whether we have to schedule a special one or, do it at the next one, to just be able to give the select board the time to consider everything, get staff feedback, get other feedback from other residents who, maybe weren't on the committee but had watched the interviews and had comments about those candidates that they liked or didn't like. And then, once again, improve and expand the reference check, just making sure that we get a full holistic approach to the reference checks and backgrounds and getting all the data that we want to make sure that we have a candidate that does fit. So we added a couple, I know this is already addressed in the position statement, but just specific skills and experience do we believe the next town manager needs to possess: cultural fit, leadership skills, communication skills, municipal management experience, somebody who's a facilitator and can delegate, someone with strong working knowledge of town-wide operations and responsibilities.
Agree.
Key characteristics overall, there was quite a few, but somebody who has collaborative leadership, can honor local traditions while still improving the community, and is able to set a vision for a town. Just to name a few. We also asked a couple of questions, and I think that what we could do is look at the questions that were asked before in the previous round and in the final candidate round, and see what questions were asked, and see if we want to ask them in both rounds so that the public gets that answer as well, at what point we want to ask those. There was a list of about 20 questions, I would say. These are just a couple that I chose that I think was a good example and gave a select board question, a staff question, and a search committee question. So timeline. We asked, do people think that the reasonable timeline that we propose with having a selection date by January 2024, early February 2024 was reasonable? 10 people said that it was reasonable, 7 said that's too late, we need to do a shorter time frame, and 1 person said that that is too early and we should start the search at a later time. With that being said, the current timeline option that we had discussed before is very similar to the time frame that we had used in the initial search, and would end with a decision being made by the end of January 2024, early February. Another option, if we wanted to, taking into consideration that people thought it was too short of a time frame, too long, to accelerate it a little bit, there's the option to have this done by the end of December this year, and this would include posting the position within the next week or so, having that open for about 3 weeks. In that time, we obviously take resumes, figure out who would be processing those, whether it's a consultant, the interim HR director, or someone else determined by the board. And then would we have a community forum? Again, that was an optional part that we didn't have last time. We could do that again, or a survey. I'm not sure the survey, what would be different in terms of what we're searching for and the candidate position. Again, review and revise the job posting. So is there anything that we would want to change or emphasize more or less? And then advertise and recruit. So we would post the job for 3 weeks, is the usual standard, 3 or 4. By the time the first October meeting for the select board, we would be able to appoint the screening committee again, and receive applications in that same time that we're receiving resumes. You would appoint the screening committee. At that time, we would have the search facilitator in place as well. They would go through the resumes. We would schedule resume review for the end of October. The first round of interviews would be early to mid-November, before Thanksgiving, with the final interviews being done early December, and a meeting to make a decision either mid-December or at the very latest early January.
That it?
Yeah, so just So there's additional comments that, on the upcoming town manager search that I wanted to share, just essential to have a legal or HR person help during the process. I think that that's, the intention of the board, from what I've read. Not wait an arbitrary amount of time to start the process. I know that some people have said we should just let it settle and see what happens. That was sort of the, not to let the town wait and to, get some stability. Not that we don't have stability, to get a permanent town manager in position sooner rather than later is the overall feeling. And how town manager experience is or is not going to be considered in the next search. You had 4 finalists who had different levels of experience, and so how is that going to play into this next search? So the next steps is just deciding on a timeline, how the search will be facilitated and who will facilitate it, and the screening committee and their composition.
And the community forum, which that timeline was happening real soon.
Right, and again, that was an optional thing, and so we can put it at any point during the, during that. I think the timeline, I just think that there's also that's something that the board can decide, and I think that we could get together rather quickly, but I think these 3 other things are a priority to decide on, so that we can either get the ball, get everything moving now, and if we want to accelerate the process, or if we want, it's not as urgent and we could have the time to review the posting and post it right after the next meeting if the board wants to do a little bit of the original timeline that was proposed.
Can you go back to timeline 1?
Yeah, we don't, can you upload this too, just so sometimes I like to click
Yeah,
through it while we're
absolutely.
talking.
This first timeline is in last meeting's board docs if you want to be able to look at it. Yeah. So basically, this takes away the time that it would take to formulate the job posting, because we've already done that, and it needs, if any, minor adjustments, and then just basically pushes all those little yellow bars to the left and gets us done a little bit quicker.
Option 2 does.
But takes us right smack over the holidays as well.
Yeah, and yeah. So while we're chewing on that a little bit, I want to mention that a couple of weeks ago, Bernie Lynch did call me. And we had a great conversation. Certainly was as surprised at the outcome as we all are with the first go-around. He's willing to facilitate for us if we're interested at no fee. So the only cost would be posting the requirement on 2 sites, but he said that would be our cost regardless whether he did it for us or it would be the same.
Be about $700 between the MMA posting and the ICMA posting.
Correct. So, so he's been more than willing to help facilitate us, take whatever role we want him to do. That's something I wanted to bring to the board today. Thoughts on that? I know it. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Christina did a great job here. And I looked at all the raw data. I'm sure we all looked at all the raw data. And there were a lot of questions and issues relative to how the search was conducted. Enough for me to feel that, it would not be a good choice to have him come back.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
I would say yes.
Yeah, I had a positive experience working with him, and he was able to be a sounding board for a lot of the steps and how things work, and be able to get people together and, be a facilitator. I don't think you can fault any one person or step in the process precisely when someone's not a good fit. I think
one of the things, though, Dennis, potentially we would not have him do would be the background checks. I mean, I think Jamie, our legal counsel, said she'd be more than happy to take over that portion, once we get to that final 3, 4, 5 candidates.
And Bernie was fine with that as well.
Right.
And more, I'm thinking more hold our hand through the process than having any real
there's a lot of administrative tasks that go into it, like collecting the resumes, setting the meetings up, facilitating it, and, I imagine, Mary Beth's not looking to probably take that on. We may have a new HR director, Paige puts her name in, she's not gonna be, so we're gonna need a little bit of, quite frankly, administrative help, I think, to get a lot of this done, and I think he was very organized and did a great job, administratively facilitating everything, keeping it on track, kind of shepherding us through the process. I think we'll just look at some other steps, maybe through a different lens.
Right. Well,
And for other people.
yeah, I mean, everyone needs to weigh in here, but the two areas of concern I had, and I could be convinced to go in this direction. The two areas of concern I had, the biggest one was, I think the reference checking was really deficient. In terms of not being able to tease out some of the issues that should have been brought to our attention in terms of fit and other feedback that we've gotten informally and formally about, the candidate. So that would be one thing. The other thing is, the good news and the bad news is he's very well connected to all of the town managers. It seems like all of the town managers out there, and that can be really good or that can be bad because you have these relationships. And how do we know if the objectivity is there? And this has nothing to do with Bernie. It says this would apply to anyone in that same situation. So I just bring that forward as, an area of concern. But if somebody else is handling the reference checking under real, tight guidelines that we're comfortable with, I could live with that.
And just to make you feel more comfortable there too, as far as I'm aware, every application came through, so it wasn't like he sifted through those and only handed some forward too, so,
Well, and I was kind of surprised to read some of the comments referring to Bernie, because I feel like I can't speak for what before it came to us, but I most certainly don't think he pushed anybody to the top once it got to us. So I can't speak for the other side. I can only speak for what we had connection with him, and when the four finalists came to us. I don't think he at all kind of pushed us in any direction. So I was kind of surprised to read some of those other comments, but of course I wasn't part of that part of the process, so I was kind of surprised, but I don't think he did that. I don't know if anybody else felt that when it got to us. And I think what's going to happen, when I was reading those, I was thinking to myself, this is what he does for a living. And he's doing it for so many towns that, of course, he's going to be familiar. I'm not saying he should be pushing anybody with anybody else to search or our search, but when someone said it seemed like, I think one of the comments was kind of like, well, he seemed like he knew the applicants. Well, I think that's what's going to happen, because I'm sure he sees multiple people.
and he fully disclosed that he knew him, I think, from.
Oh, I think, he worked for him.
Yeah.
John worked on
Chelmsford.
Yeah, Chelmsford maybe, so he
Chelmsford.
fully
Yeah.
disclosed that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the other thing I want to mention, not that I feel like we have to defend anybody, but one of the things I think maybe it's just good to get clear, because it was up there that John presented before us. When he came to us, he was the town manager of Northborough, and he does that presentation all over the place. And I think, Seth, you saw him speak about budgets. So just to get that out there too, because, people are listening at home and it said, that we.
But at the same time, while he was making his presentation, I got a text from a townsperson saying, nice pre-interview for the town manager's position.
Well, listen, I would be lying if I didn't sit there and say, because of how I am, I like with the budgets and the finances, that I would be lying if I didn't say in my head, geez, wouldn't it be nice if he applied here? Because there were things that he was saying in the presentation, but that wasn't what made me pick him. But I just wanted people to know that it wasn't like that anybody on this board asked him to come.
I think we should focus our conversations back to the timeline though than the specifics.
Well, right, but, and that's why I'm going to go back to you, Paige. How is the search for a interim or permanent.
Oh, I can talk about that.
Yeah, see, that's right in your wheelhouse.
It's actually going great. We've interviewed 2 people, and we have 1 more tomorrow.
Sorry, HR director, is that what we're
Yeah.
talking about?
HR director.
Okay.
HR, because
Okay.
that sort of fits in a little bit
Yeah.
Yeah. a
with
lot-
what we're
lot
doing.
bit.
Yeah.
A lot of
Well,
it.
a lot bit, yeah.
So we interviewed 2 already, and we have 1 more tomorrow. The 2 yesterday are interested in being interim and also continuing on. And either of the 2 would be fabulous. So, I mean, so far, I think
Yep.
I think we're going to try to make a decision tomorrow.
Yep, just a little rundown. We had 16 applicants, so 13 of them came from our ad on our website, 2 came from a consulting firm, and 1 came from an HR site where I posted the job. Of the 16 candidates, 6 people have municipal experience, some to the level over and above what we need, some below what we need, but nonetheless, I think municipal experience is, a big priority here in a candidate profile. So, yeah, we very well could be making a decision soon. But before you go back, I'd be remiss if I didn't insert a few comments on your process, because I was not involved at all. I've seen this happen. I've been involved in these. I've seen a number of different consultants conduct, and based on the feedback that you got from people who took the time to comment, I really think, regardless of whether you go with the previous consultant or you have maybe the interim HR director do it or you go to a different consultant, I think you really have to think about the lessons you learned in the process. And I think there were some process things that if I were teaching a class, I would point out a few things where I think that maybe your screening committee, you may need to look at that. I've seen in communities where you have a Board of Selectmen member, a member of the public, key department head, then you have some of your maybe executive group on there as well, like maybe not just one department head. You have maybe a police chief and a DPW director or something like that, key stakeholders. I also think that there's a lot you can do ahead of time, creating a candidate profile. Last time you hired someone who's very strong in finance. Is that what you're looking for? So then you don't end up with candidates that you don't think are the right fit. You can do a candidate profile, and I don't mean anything discriminatory is what you would put in the list, but you say, we need someone seasoned to develop the next person, or we need someone who's new, fresh, maybe comes from a different background, or maybe you say you need someone with a finance background or a planning background. So I think you really have to have whoever your person is leading this run your screening committee and yourselves through a candidate profile and think about it. An example I can give you in Foxborough world was when Ed O'Leary retired. We had a 30-year police chief, and we really wanted to promote from within, your board did, but we didn't have anybody ready. So in our candidate profile for the next police chief, when Bill Baker was hired, we said, we're looking for someone extremely seasoned with a big worldview who can, develop policies, processes, develop our next person. That was the candidate profile, and it was met in the hiring process because now we have all kinds of great people that he mentored, the new chief, the deputy chief, and all of that. So I think that's an important thing, thinking about who your screening committee is, the makeup of it, developing a candidate profile, and then, consider an assessment center. We do it for police sergeants and fire lieutenants. We consider an activity that shows how they lead. We do it, there are a ton of consultants that do those. It's like a management sort of like play where you do a number of different essential tasks of a manager, and you run all the candidates through it. And you
All
can
of them are the final 4.
Well, no, the final. I mean, if you have like 4 finalists or 2 finalists, you run them through, and then you can compare that way as well. And then I think it's, you're remiss if you don't go visit their work site and see what their people are saying about them. I think, you can go to their town hall as a member of the screening committee and go around and ask. And then someone mentioned having the finalists come in and meet with staff. That's an important thing too. So I think if you want to do that, you know, a thorough search like that with thinking out of the box with some of those activities, definitely your option 2 feels really rushed.
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah, I agree.
Especially during, you just said you're having a special town meeting October 27th. Do you really want to have these 2 things concurrently happening? A special town meeting and your, you know, resume screening, like, you know, I just think pushing it to the February date gives you a more thoughtful process.
See, I think the opposite, because that February date also leaves us that a possibility if we hire someone that might have to give a 60 or 90-day notice before they leave their position. So now we could be throwing out another 2 or 3. I think, seeing how we've already done this once before,
Yeah.
I think a lot of the stuff is done. I am definitely for option 2.
That
I mean,
means you're
I
going to
just-
be
I
like
just think it's
posting it
pushing
next
so
week.
far out.
Yeah, so just to go, if we
Yeah.
bring up option 2, like, we've already missed some of those deadlines, essentially.
And I just think this is such a key position. To rush it is, I mean, I think,
Like, I would like to redo, I know we did the candidate profile, I don't know if Bernie will do that, like, I think we need to take, it's important to me that we take a couple weeks and, you know, we have the staff and community listening, we have the community forum, I'd
and your
like to do that.
comments
We
right there
review-
from staff that will
Yeah.
help with your candidate
Well,
profile.
I guess it all depends on, so I'm just going to come out and say this. I mentioned to Christina, I didn't take the survey, and I just called her just so she didn't know she didn't have to keep reaching out to me that I was, like, I didn't see it or something. I was fine with the process. That same type of process brought Bill Keegan here, what we did. So just because the end result was not the same, I was okay with the process. And the other question I had was, listen, I would love to get some feedback from staff members or what they're looking for to be their leader, but asking them to take the survey, they weren't part of the process. So I'm not really sure, and like I said, it's not that I don't respect their opinions, but you're asking department heads to take a survey about the process that they were not a part of. So I'm not really sure why we hit them. And it was funny because we went that way, and then I was the one that said to Christina, and then I know she talked to you, I said, did you send it out to the search committee? They were like 2/3 of the process, and we didn't. We thought of department heads first. So I want to make it perfectly clear, I want every person who works for this town to have a leader that is thoughtful, respects them, that it is a fit. But I'm not for picking your own boss. I'm just not. You know, I think we can get, whether it's the same search committee if they're asked again or whatever. I don't think the end result was because of the process. I think, you know, the decision landed here. So I don't think the end result was because of the process. So I think we set a criteria. We were very specific on what we wanted. And because the choice didn't work out, I just don't know why we need to backtrack. If you want to get if we want to, in the meantime, say, hey, to department heads, employees, hey, can you, that'll help us with our decision at the end, but I just don't see the need of them to be part of that process. You know, I just feel like,
Even to the point of not having a department head on the screening committee?
I don't know, I mean, I could, if we talked about it, I could maybe, but we were pretty clear last time, and we stuck to residents.
I think that was kind of a mistake, though.
I do too.
Well, and we did have Bill Euchner, which we were able to have because he doesn't answer to the town manager. He answers to the school committee. So we did have somebody who's been around. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it wasn't like, we threw it out there, we put it in the reporter. It wasn't like 100 people reached out. I mean, we kind of took just about everybody that reached out, other than
It was not put in the
Paige,
reporter.
because we had talked
No, it
about
was never in
it.
the reporter.
Huh?
It wasn't in the
It was not
reporter.
put in the reporter. It was, we had people who,
Was it just on the website?
I don't
I
think
thought
it,
we put something, I thought.
it was,
we did.
it
I
was
think
said
it
at
was
a
just
select
word
board
of mouth.
meeting. I think we had people who were interested as soon as we had talked
Well,
about
maybe
it,
we'll
and
put it in the
then,
report of the summer. I could have sworn that I read it somewhere too.
Yeah.
There was an article,
Yeah.
yeah, but it wasn't like we posted a job.
No, I don't post the town manager job. I mean, but we put out if people were
Yes.
interested
Yes,
to reach out.
screening committee.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
screening
Okay, now I'm
committee.
following you.
I'm sorry, I meant the screening
Sorry,
committee,
okay.
yeah. No, not the.
Did we
Can I
run
just-
this by Bernie?
can I
too?
just
Like,
make
he did
a-
have a good process and a good timeline. Did Christina make up this timeline, or?
I copied this from,
Okay,
mimicked
so
it
it's
from the
from
last
Bernie's,
time and has spoken with him.
Time option 1 is
Time-
copied from last time.
Time option 1 was copied from last time, and then in speaking with him, because we already have the candidate profile and the position statement again, without any major adjustments to those, he felt that we could accelerate this process, as the data kind of show that people thought it was either right on time or would like it a little bit early. So just taking that, again, giving you the board options of how you wanted to get this going.
Yeah, it's not that those dates, but then I'm thinking, once we hit the other date, now we're talking about, it all depends on who gets hired. Like, someone might, we know Bill had in his contract 90 days. You know what I mean? So what if we hire somebody that has to give a 90-day notice?
But that's also a question
Yeah.
we need to ask earlier too.
Yeah.
Because that did come up later. I think we need to know that going into it, what someone's,
Good point. Absolutely.
Yeah, 'cause
That's-
I don't think.
That's a typical
John's
interview
was that long.
question.
Yeah.
That's, if you're considered for this job,
Yeah.
what would be the earliest you would be available?
Right, I don't think John had more than 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I just want to make a correction, or maybe I misspoke, Stephanie. I didn't say, I don't think staff should be picking their boss, but I think if you have a well-respected member of the executive function team as one voice on a screening committee, I happen to be here, have been here before, and now I happen to be here now, and I'm dealing with fallout from a process that wasn't successful. So operationally, these people are who run your town or your department heads, and you need, a leader to lead them, but they're all experts in their field, and,
I feel like they have a seat at the table too, really.
and there's quite a bit of fallout from this, and that's why I think if you just repeat the whole process exactly like it was all over again, you're going to have the same result.
Well, there are a couple that Christina put that we saw that I didn't see up here. That was very interesting. I don't know who made the comment, but about possibly, I don't even know if it said psychologist or somebody like.
A personality
to
assessment.
put them,
Right, right.
yeah, to put them through that, which to me, as I was reading it, I'm like, that could be something that we could add in. When I say the process, I think the general process was fine, okay? And I feel like there really was no way for us to predict what was going to happen. I think we looked at the 4 candidates that came forward to us. But with that being said, some of these other things about, getting the background checks done, independently. And I think somebody even said to us, listen, unless there's only so much you can be told if you call, right? If somebody were to call you and say, hey, can you tell me about Steph McGowan? I'm thinking about hiring her. What can you say?
There's
You can
only so much I can
She
say.
works here.
Yep.
She's worked here from this date to that date. So that's just how it works. I don't know why.
That's why, like, site visits to their workplace, you're entirely, as a member of a screening committee, you can go to their workplace and chat with their department heads and see what it's like.
Yeah, and I went through 2 principal hires at the Taylor, like, as a parent, and like, it seems like in the school world, they come here for a visit, like, we would go there for a visit, not me personally, but like, it happened, and
That's pretty typical in municipal
in the
management
school side, but we
positions.
didn't do that here, so maybe
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no,
And
I
that's
just
not-
think,
Thinking,
there's
just
things we
thinking a
could
little bit out
add.
of the box,
Yeah.
because
That could make the process better, but I mean, the process was the process. Like, I just felt like we came up with the criteria, we said what we wanted. Now, I mean, it's going to happen this time along too. I mean, everybody has, Seth and I, maybe Dennis a little bit from advisory committee, we have a little bit of a finance, that was appealing to me, And I mean, I said it openly, I'll say it again. John was not my first choice, but my choice was not what 2 of the other board members, their choice. So I went with, so I was picking from 2, not from 4. Because I mentioned my choice and nobody kind of bid on it. So, yeah, so I mean, we all had something, I think we got 4 great candidates. I mean, unfortunately, it didn't work, but, we had a candidate that's been 14 years at the position he's at. So, I mean, I don't think any of us could have known.
I think it would be a mistake for us to conclude the process was fine.
Yeah.
And we had a failed result here. I personally recall emphasizing to Bernie multiple times that fit was critically important. That's in my experience. I've done many, many searches over the years. You know, it's like, you know, culturally strategy for lunch every day. It's that type of thing. You have a lot of good positive attributes, but if the fit isn't there and you got to tease that fit out in the process, then the process didn't work.
And that's hard to condense when you want to do possibly site visits or here and there. You know, this timeline, doing all that over the holidays makes me a little nervous.
Can we just make a decision on that now that we're talking about it?
Yeah, I just had
Oh,
one.
I apologize.
I just had one, oh, that's fine, I just had one comment. I'm aligned with Stephanie on option 2. I think that, you know, that we can move, we have the structure in place, we can make minor changes along the way, but I mean, posting the job, I think so anyway, long story short, I'm aligned with option 2. Yet, the only caveat to that is that if we have, the risk I see with option 1 is lack of HR, human resources. Mary Beth can only do so much in one day, right? So my understanding is we're lacking in process, we're lacking in structure, and I see a huge amount of risk associated with having the departments run their own HR, mini HR departments. I think there's a lot of risk in that. And to have lacking HR direction and support to somebody can implement process and system is a challenge for me. The fact that we have strong candidates for an HR role is promising. It makes me feel less stressed about option 1 that's going to run out 6-7 months, whatever it would take to get someone into that. So I'm feeling better about option 1. I feel option 2 is a better choice, but.
And just to comment on Paige saying that she was happy with the 2 candidates, you know what when we talked before, I'm happy to hear that, and that they might be interested in being, you know, permanent. When we sat there and said, well, no one's going to come, no one's going to take the HR president, and then all of a sudden, I wish I thought of it while we were talking, but Liz came here in December, and she had no idea who her boss was going to be. So I think we are capable of getting an HR person in without knowing who the next town manager is. So I'm glad you have 2 candidates that, you know, that seem like they could work out and that they're interested in full-time.
Possibly 3, right? Because there's another.
Oh, possibly a third, okay.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
Yeah, I feel like we're just biting off more than we can chew for what I see in the next 3 weeks.
Especially if we can have human resources here in a couple of, 3, 4 weeks.
We are asking that question, and most people we could probably have somebody in place by the time, I'm here another month, by the time I leave, there'll be somebody here, so.
And we can
But
always
still might
bring
not
in
be
one.
till mid-October. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
thing, it might be, you know.
But I think option 1's still doable.
Yeah.
I mean, that's valuable even from your experience. If we go back to the other one, we can always bring it in by a week or 2.
Is
I hate getting
there
off
something
track.
in the middle? Like, is there something?
Well,
I
you
mean,
may
we're
be
talking-
able
we're
to-
giving
Remember,
them 2 months.
What we did was first took the first go-round and redo different dates to it, just to give us a
Yeah.
timeline.
Yeah.
And then Christina on her own bunched it up a little bit. I mean,
I just
could
feel
we
like
tighten
it's-
up the first one a tad? Yeah, we
I
probably
think you
could a
can.
little
I think
bit.
you can meet your targets earlier on the option 1, but I think you're already behind the 8 ball for option 2.
I agree.
I
It
agree.
scares me that we're already behind the 8 ball on 2.
So
Like, I feel rushed.
So what would the end timeline be? So the date for a decision and the contract
Go back
negotiations?
to 1.
Keep in mind that we did schedule extra meetings, or additional meetings to accommodate for the interviews, the announcement for the finalists, so we can, you know, add meetings via Zoom and in person as, you know, and work out that
Keep in
schedule.
mind, things can happen concurrently. If you want to go do a site visit,
Right.
so much can happen concurrently, because it's not one person doing it. It might be a member of the screening committee, or it might be Jamie checking references. So you can tighten up and have things
Maybe we're being
run
premature,
concurrent.
though, that instead of looking at the timeline first, we have to say, do we want Barney back first? That's kind of number 1. And then, you know, get him on board, get him involved in the process, so he's not handed a timeline that he hasn't, discussed, and then.
I did
See where
discuss
it can
this
be tight.
timeline with him, excuse me. I did discuss the
Okay.
timeline with him and then, and said I was proposing, based on the feedback and based on what he had said about the ability to accelerate that with the position statement. I think the last time, the first option has a lot more time for that review and revise the job posting. That's 3 weeks. And then you advertise, that's line number 5, you advertise and recruit, and it looks like we did that for 4 weeks, so.
Yeah, we can probably bring that, like,
Yeah.
there's probably places
Again,
to
that-
tweak
that
it.
had what Mary
But we
Beth
don't
had
have the
said.
site visits here, like, I think we need
So
to
why
add
do we
some
have
of
to
that.
revise the job posting?
We don't, I'm just saying that the last time we had 3 weeks to review and revise the job posting from when Bill was hired. So that was done and using the candidate statement and that Bernie had, and his group had written based on the feedback from the community survey, based on feedback from talking with department heads and your feedback as select board
Yeah.
members.
We were also talking 9 years difference. We're talking only,
Right.
I would guess that could just, that part, I mean, I can't see anything changing there.
But like Mary Beth just said, looking at the candidate profile, like maybe, I think would be remiss not to look at that again, just to review it and like, I don't want to just say, okay, this is good. I'd like to have a meeting or something to review that and make sure after everything that we know now that we don't want to adjust the candidate
And it could be
profile.
your board and whoever's appointed as the screening committee, so you have some new
Bring it
perspectives
together.
in there.
Yeah.
And someone to facilitate and lead that, to help you.
That could be really beneficial. Like, we never had that kickoff meeting, kind of with the screening committee and us. We kind of kept the walls up, but at least if we knew who the screening committee was, getting them involved in the candidate profile, could be beneficial.
Well, I think one of the plans this time is to put out a notice. Anybody interested, in all the media. And then having a little bit of a committee to go through those applications. I'm thinking maybe 2 members of the board, human resources, if we have someone at the time, or certainly Bernie, go through those, come up with a bunch of candidates, maybe bring it back to the board. And personally, I have no idea what I'd be looking for. I'm sure Dennis probably would be a great person to have, looking at potential candidates.
True.
Leah, I'm sure, would do a good job. Dennis, I don't know if you've done it, not Dennis, Seth, I don't know if you've done any screening in your position. I haven't, so I'd certainly give it up to, I don't think we could have more than 2 people.
Correct.
Because then it's a,
Then you have to post for, you could have it, but you'd have to post for a meeting each time you met.
right.
So do we want to go back to just like, do we want to re-engage?
Yeah.
Yeah, like-
Do we want to re-engage Bernie to help facilitate? I think there's a lot of things that he's not going to do for us, especially towards the end. But he could keep us on track and just have that bird's eye view of what we're doing.
Yeah.
Anybody? A lot of shaking heads, yeah? Maybe talk to you into it now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's a very generous offer of him, very much appreciated, and I
Should we
would
do a
definitely
vote?
be in support of that.
Or just,
There seems,
yeah.
up to you.
All right,
Are
so
you on board with Bernie, too?
Yes.
I'll
I was
do a
looking this
motion,
way,
move
sorry, I
to
had my
move
back
forward
to
with
it.
engaging Bernie Lynch of Community Paradigm Associates again.
Is that a motion? Second?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Give Bernie a call tomorrow unless he's listening in. Hi, Bernie. You
And
are?
then, for next steps, maybe at our next meeting, we look at, we firm up the timeline. We talk about what we want on the screening committee. We talk about what we want in the profile to help us, like, to really get some traction and to move forward.
Should we send out the notice that we're looking for candidates, though? Or would that be too soon?
You mean for screening committee?
For screening committee. Or would that be too soon?
I mean, if you're going to engage Bernie, just see what he thinks.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
I think.
And what I think. when
And he
Mary
knows
Beth-
the community now,
Yeah,
so.
and the last time, I think, like, we were looking for, I forget, 6 or 7 people, and we had 7. There was no, like, breaking down the doors to
Right.
get people, like, there was no, hopefully we have more people that want to be engaged. I
I
think
think-
everyone that was on it last time was great,
Be
and hopefully they want to
interesting.
do it
I
again.
think it'd be interesting. I think more people might.
might
I
be
just
involved in it.
caution that you definitely need people who understand the operation, the day-to-day operation, because that impacts employees, it impacts
But
department
having
heads
people
and
that
it
have never worked in
impact.
municipal, Seth, why? If
I
we have
never
a s-
worked in municipal until, you know, joining a board or, so I think people are looking for certain characteristics. But yeah, I think Bernie's job is to narrow down.
Well, I guess we'd have to
Resumes
see,
and then-
see who we got. Listen, we were talking about, we had, okay, Tina was school committee, okay? You had Jim DeVellis, who was, former, no, but what I'm saying is, I think we had a good section of people. It'd be interesting to see who else comes forward.
Yeah.
But I don't think, so, that, you had Mark, who, and also, Kevin, who's on a board.
Larry.
Larry, who was on advisory, and he's finance,
Maybe someone from town who works for the town. I mean, if you feel really passionate about that, because I don't feel like they have to necessarily live in town. I'm more about their expertise and what they know and what they're looking for. But, maybe if there's a department head that lives in town, like Bill Yukna or someone else, that would satisfy everyone.
See, I'd go with 7 different people.
So I think we should just do the call out and see
Yeah,
what we
but I
get.
think we
Is
can
the
put
call,
that.
so the call out, do we want to
do
put
the
anything
call out and see
specific? Do
what
we want to
happens.
give town staff the option to put their name in the ring for consideration?
I would, my personal opinion would be no necessarily to staff, but I think we should have a senior member on that committee, and I think we should have a board member on that committee.
And perhaps you have Bernie write the blurb for you so that the messaging, it fits with his,
Yeah.
the way that he wants to do it,
And he had echoed exactly what you said, a select board member, a senior management, staff member, and other
Yeah.
board members, other members of the community, key stakeholders.
Yeah, if you're going to re-engage him, I think letting him advise you on that, I think it's
Okay.
Yeah, he's
And
done
maybe
this
going
Oh,
through
Brina.
this, and maybe he can tighten it up by a couple of weeks.
I'm sure he.
Because the process is, we're not reinventing the wheel, and a lot of this has already been done.
To think about it a different way, is there a deadline that you would like to make a decision, and maybe we're able to work back from that with Bernie? So is it the end of January that you want to make a decision, end of December, and
No,
sort of
I
give him
think
a target
December's too
date?
soon. I think,
Okay.
Christine, is he available? Did he say he's available to kick off option 1? Like
Yes,
right
I mean,
now?
I think he was available for either, and
Oh, good.
Doc had talked to him, and then I had a conversation just wanting to be able to, after doing the survey, to be able to give the board a little bit more feedback, like the
Mm-hmm.
composition of the board, and to sort of throw off, to throw out there the
And
comments
you'll-
that were made and what his opinion
You'll
on those.
share the
Absolutely.
survey with him?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then there'll be an HR person in place too, so you have boots on the ground to help work with that.
help with that.
Yeah.
All right, so that's a good plan. All right, I'll talk to Bernie tomorrow, probably liaise with Christina, and we'll go from there. All right,
We did discussion. Did we take the vote? We did? On engaging Bernie? I
yeah,
know
we took the vote.
Good, yeah.
I don't-
Oh, well, just for the heck of it, all those in favor of Bernie?
Aye.
That one, yep, that's right, we may have been stuck on
Yeah, I
further
wasn't sure where we
discussion.
landed, sorry.
Yeah. FMLA, oh, no, wait a minute. Family Medical Leave Act policy.
Very good.
Took me a-
Just when you're all tired, you want to go through a policy change. This actually is, by way of history, everybody knows what family medical leave is. It's been around since 1993. Returning back here after being gone for 4 years, I realized our process has been inconsistent. We're not designating when we should and all of that. It's not, I'm not saying we have a real problem, but I think it's confusing for employees, it's confusing for people who are requesting leave, and then there's been a lot of transition in the people who are administering FMLA. So what I thought is, in my consulting, I've done a lot of policy manuals for people, and a lot of people have an FMLA, Family Medical Leave policy. So I've put together the best of the best, run this by the Personnel Wage Board. It is sort of, the way without a policy it works now is if you're going out on leave, you have a medical illness, and you contact us and say, I'm going to be out for 2 months, we send you these federal forms that are very confusing, that you give to your doctor and you give back to us, and then we designate you with this federal form, and it's a lot of very, like, technical stuff. So this policy kind of walks an employee through. What are some of the reasons I can take leave? How do I go about doing it? How is it calculated? What happens if my spouse and I both work for the town? What are the forms I need? You know, it's a very user-friendly. How do I know if I'm eligible? What if I need more medical certification? I'm out for 30 days, I may need to get recertified. So it just talks about, and then what happens with my benefits? Am I on paid or unpaid leave? As you know, Paid Family Medical Leave Act isn't a municipal benefit. Of the 351 communities in Massachusetts, no municipalities have opted into the legislation for paid family leave. So FMLA is completely, you know, by the town adopts a rolling calendar year. You either require people to use their accrued paid time or allow them to use it or not use it. The benefit implications, if they're not on paid family, if they're not using their paid accrued time, then they have to write a check for their benefits. Chapter 32B, Mass General Law, Chapter 32B kicks in about health insurance. So it's very, very confusing. So this walks you through, how do my benefits work? What happens if I'm on unpaid leave? How do I still pay for my health insurance? So suggesting this policy to you to help streamline our process, be a little more user-friendly for employees. And Personnel Wage Board, with one tiny edit, approved this. So just wanted to share it with the board and get your approval on it.
But we don't have to approve it tonight.
No, we've
We know
gone
we
a very
got
long time without one, so there's no hurry.
Right.
Take time and digest
Yeah,
it.
digest it, read it over it. I know you've had some great input already. I think I saw a couple of red lines that.
Yeah, I just think it
you
still
inputted.
needs, one, under the group health insurance, I think it needs to say, if unpaid, to maintain uninterrupted coverage, they need to forward payment. So I still think that
Okay.
piece is a little
You
confusing.
just want to
but-
put that above the payment part. Okay.
So is that second sentence?
Yep,
Because if they're on paid leave, it's going to come out of their check still.
Yep.
So just like thinking about it from an employee's perspective, the questions they may have. And then so there's three versions. It's the last one, FMLA policy, September 2023, red line 9623 is the last one.
okay.
And that has the one, there was a header that just said, paid leave and FMLA is job protection, not pay. So just changing the header on that so people understand the difference there. And then,
So we offer the leave, it's just not paid leave.
right, so it's just.
No
I just-
municipalities
your job.
offer.
You can
Yeah,
use
the
your
header
paid time.
leave, because it could mislead people, and instead of it should be like
Yeah.
pay while on leave. And then do we need to think about anything from the school side? So again, with our silos,
Well, they follow the Family Medical Leave Act. It's a
Okay.
federal law. They may have in their collective bargaining agreements a more generous benefit, but that would supersede it anyway. But we have to offer what the federal government, you know, considers job-protected leave. So this policy encompasses exactly it mirrors the federal law.
All right, great, thank you.
Okay,
Any
Thank you.
feedback after you go through it? Certainly, Mary Beth.
yep, feel free to reach out.
All right, acting town manager's update, her new placard.
shiny.
Yeah, I know.
All right, here we go. I have a lot, as usual. So, one of the hottest topics that, since we've last met, has been the migrant families and the migrant housing. So I figured I would run down through that. On August 22nd is when we got the first call from the governor's office informing us that they had rented out 93 rooms under the governor's state of emergency. Just for people's clarification, this right to shelter law under which this is happening has been in effect since 1983 with Governor Dukakis, so that was rather interesting. Obviously, situations have changed since then, but so that was interesting. We held our first team meeting the next day, and I just need to quickly whip through the names of the teammates, because it really has been an amazing response, as you can all well imagine. So we have Chief Kelleher, Tom Kenvin, from Fire Department, Mike Grace, Rich Noonan from Police, Dr. Berdos and Bill Yukna and Jen Rosenberg from the school departments, Matt Brennan from the Health Department, Mark Craig, Pam McGuire from Human Services, and Kate is another social worker. She hasn't been in our meetings much, but she has been on site really helping out, so I'd be remiss not to mention her. Christina LaRose is also over at Public Safety. She's the social worker over there. Scott Shippey, our building commissioner. Senator Feeney and Rep. Barrows have been at almost every meeting. Gatra has attended at least one of our meetings and is in touch, and Christina has been at all of our meetings. Mark quickly mobilized a Health and Human Services migrant support team, which consisted of some staff as well. And the discretionary fund has been involved, the food pantry, the YMCA, the Bethany Chapel, and also with their affiliation with the food pantry. So as of 9/11, there are 29 families staying at the hotel, which equates to 103 people. We do expect more at the end of the month. They are sold out for Billy Joel, and I think that's kind of what's keeping it, from activating more right now. According to Dr. Berdos yesterday, 28 school-aged children started school yesterday on 9/11. The school department has been doing amazing work on behalf of these children. Dr. Berdos has been involved. She's been in site. Bill Yukna, principal from the middle school, speaks Spanish. She's been helping out. The nurse leader, Jen Rosenberg, she's been heavily involved dealing with all the questions around, health and safety and vaccination. She's been working closely with Tom Kenvin. Just for edification, the state has reported that these families are here legally, and we can say that at least 3 families are homeless families from Massachusetts. So it's not all migrants. There are some, local folks as well. This afternoon, I got a call that the National Guard will deploy 2 personnel to the hotel tomorrow, beginning at noon, to begin their service as on-site care coordinators. A lot of these emergency shelters that have been overwhelmed did typically have on-site care coordinators, but Foxborough being an overflow, we haven't. And that's why Margie Smith at the hotel has been a tremendous support. She's been dealing with the state. She's been giving us a lot of information. The governor's office tends to lag a little bit behind, so we're getting information more so from the hotel than we are from the state. This National Guard, which it will not be tanks, it's not like that. It's just, 2 personnel coming to sort of serve. To service support staff. They're going to help with logistics, coordinating things like food. They are being served 3 meals a day. They're working on basic needs, transportation, and medical care as the state works to find more permanent staffing solutions. The state's designated regional rapid response teams. So these on-site personnel will help elevate issues to this rapid response team staff. The rapid response teams are staffed by state employees and will oversee sites in a specific region. So we might have a same region with like Norton, Plainville, Mansfield. We don't yet know. So they're working heavily to help arrange benefits and whatnot and work with our officials. Christina LaRose got creative right away. One of the big issues we're having is with translation. She's already applied for a $10,000 grant from Blue Cross Blue Shield. We know we're going to be made whole eventually, but again, we're trying to think outside the box, as our team always does. So it really has been a tremendous response. We are working on a community donation day. I believe it's October 14th, although it hasn't been officially announced. We don't want to risk getting stuff we don't need. We don't want to overwhelm the community. We just want to do this right. We want to do it the one time and do it well. So right now the YMCA has been supporting us and helping us, but there is going to be additional needs and there will be more focused things. We don't want to end up with a bunch of, we all know how we are as parents. We take our bags of kids' clothes and leave them, and we're just not in the position right now to take on those types of donations, but we are organizing that. So stay tuned. I know that is a big question. It's a difficult challenge. I was able to go up there one day, and these are families. The children are just break your heart. Some of these kids haven't been to school since 2019. They they rode the bus for the first time in their lives. Their parents were in tears, Dr. Berdos reported. So there are some nice stories. The school is working hard to make sure that, and then I think the key message here is the level of services are not being diminished for existing residents at any level. Human Services always had social workers ready to step up to help community members. They continue to provide that service. The schools, same thing. They're adapting. They're going to help these children with language, but they're not going to be taking away from the existing classrooms and the existing teachers. They have alternate plans. So I shouldn't go too much into that because that's not my area of expertise, but I've sat in all these meetings and hearing how Dr. Berdos and her team are handling this really is, it's life-changing for these children, and Foxborough's in a position to be able to help. And again, we weren't asked, we were told, but as always, much like with COVID, the team rises to the occasion and kind of is in the forefront. Senator Feeney said we were being acknowledged as sort of being ahead of the game. So it's really heartwarming, and knowing this team is so strong, it's pretty incredible.
Hey, Paige, you mentioned vaccinations. Are they requiring to, I don't know, is there any chance any of these kids had been vaccinated or no?
Some of them have been vaccinated, yep, and they are working through all the laws. Now, as you know, someone pointed out to me that there are children in Foxborough schools today that aren't vaccinated. That is it's a right that, it's an individual right. So,
But I think you have to, there are certain stipulations, isn't there?
Of course.
Like it has to be a religious reason. You can't just say I'm not vaccinating my
correct. And I think,
kid, so.
and all rules will be followed. And again, I don't want to overstep into an area I'm not familiar, but I know that is a focus. We have Tom Kenvin, we have strong thing. Chief Kelleher pointed out that the good thing is for Foxborough residents is to know that the children that are vaccinated are protected. The risk is really to the unvaccinated. So, but that said, the team, Jen Rosenberg and Tom Kenvin, they're all working with the state closely to make sure records and everything is in place. So that is a high priority. Public health is always a high priority. So they are working on that. And I believe, a lot of these families do want to be back. I haven't heard of, I wouldn't necessarily hear it, but we're not hearing like a big resistance to it. I believe, a lot of.
Somebody had asked me, someone said, will they be vaccinated, my child, and I just said, I would assume they will figure that, they'll figure it out.
I would think,
I
I think as someone with kids in the school and stuff, like, we're definitely getting communications too, and I think if they have questions like that, call the school. Call the school to get the right answers.
Yeah, because I shouldn't overstep too much, but I do know that with the team, that's public health is a high priority. Switching gears to the north end zone. There was a little game on Sunday. I don't know if anybody noticed, but the Tom Brady game in the rain. But they did successfully open last Sunday. There was a ribbon cutting last week. I know that Scott Shippey and Dave Laracy practically lived up there for the past few weeks. So really, they stepped up again and made it happen. So they were able to go forward. We had a big win, Doc and the team, when he and I and Katie were all notified that the Zach Bryan tickets were going on sale before they was publicly announced.
Oh, you did find out?
Yes, yes. So we had requested that when we met with them a couple weeks ago. We said, hey, it would really go a long way, even if it's just texting Doc or texting me. But they did file with Katie, and they texted us. So we were very thankful that they did listen to us, and so that we were notified prior to. We are working with the craft group on outdoor dining for Patriot Place. We had a great meeting with the craft group leadership and our team. I think we had 18 people talking about things so we're in action on working on that. As you know, outdoor dining is going to start to change next spring, so we're making sure that there are appropriate plans and that all things all the requirements are being met. We want to note the complaints on lighting. I don't know if anybody's been on social media, but there's been some complaints about lighting from the stadium. I'm going to read a couple things. The lights you noticed last week, are a result of widespread and full power testing of Gillette Stadium new video board. The duration, color, wattage, and frequent changing of these lights are a part of a robust testing process related to this new installation. You may notice some additional testing throughout the month of September as we ensure the continuity and full functionality of the board. Outside this testing period, the video board will continue to operate at its regular capacity as it has during all stadium events dating back to the unveiling of the board on August 4th. So that was the first one. Then I did follow up and this week and said with the craft group, and they said since this update as of yesterday, the craft group has fielded only 3 new inquiries across all their social media platforms, admin reception, and Foxborough resident inbox, and general customer service portal. 2 of the 3 were resolved with our response, and ironically, the third note was a compliment on the overall renovation, including the new lighthouse. So all indications right now are that residents are satisfied with the explanation and response, and they will keep us posted. So we don't anticipate, the Northern Lights to be going on forever. And it particularly Scott Shippey, our zoning enforcement officer, pointed out that when it's hazy and foggy, as it kind of has been the last week, it kind of holds the light in and makes it look more eerie and different. So, if it was a clear night, things would dissipate more quickly. So we've had sort of weather conditions that made it look a little freaky and sometimes cool, but depends on the eye of the beholder. MBTA communities, I know no one wants to talk about that. However, the clock is ticking on that. We did receive a grant for consultant services to assist this, so that will be kicking off. We're going to have to bring zoning to town meeting in May of 2024. So, because the deadline to remain in compliance is December of 2024. So we're tentatively planning September. We're going to do some initial education and visioning. October, evaluating some proposed districts. And November, December is bylaw development. That said, this consultant service does not include public meetings. So we're going to have to figure out a strategy, when we want to include the public, do we come up with our suggestions? Right now, with this consultant, I've invited the, sort of a little task force of chairs, which would be Doc, Kevin Weinfeld, Chairman of the Planning Board, Barney Overt, Chairman of the Zoning Board, Greg Spear, Chair of the Housing Authority, just to sort of vet some things. We did look at a couple maps, and there might be a way of using some of our existing multifamily dense areas as possible districts. That said, they're not within a half mile of a train station, so I have the consulting checking on whether that's going to get triggered, because it looks like the train station is going to stick. We're pretty much a year in. The cutoff for a pilot is 11 months, so it looks like, but the consultant seems to think we should just go forward and we could put the district anywhere. I just want to make sure we're not doing this twice. If we're going to have to do it within a half mile of the train station, we want to do it once. But if we can do it elsewhere, that sort of, maybe like over the lodge and over the Fisher Street project where, they're already, because you don't have to build them, you just have to zone for them. And the question is would someone actually tear down those apartment complexes and put up more dense apartment complexes? Unlikely. So strategically, we are thinking this through. Stay tuned. I think we added a PowerPoint to your board docs. Did you get that? Yeah. So feel free to take a look at that. Offer me feedback if you want. But that is something we're going to have to talk about in the near future. As you're doing a town manager search, just add it to the list,
And adjusting to the migrant, just adjusting to that population.
And the
flex.
budget.
Like, does the state office even have the capacity right now for these projects? Like, it just seems like it's so much, and it's changing the fabric of every community, and I get we're in a crisis, but it's a lot at once.
It is a lot at once.
It's frightening.
It is. I agree. Licensing and permitting software, the town manager's office and the Board of Health are on track to launch the new permitting software system that the building department has used. It's Permitize. They'll be up and running by October 1st. So then we'll have 3 departments transitioned. And just a reminder, this was all due to grant funding, so no town money has gone into this. And we'll be onboarding land use departments and fire sometime in FY24. The financial summit. Another little thing to do done. We're looking at the first week of December. There's been a discussion as to whether it runs, right before a select board meeting. The only issue with that is the date that's thrown out. I know Dr. Berdos was hoping to do was it a superintendent?
Like meet and greet at the library, be able to, like an open house, kind of be able to answer questions. So the Wednesday would work better. I don't know that we would have advisory committee at that time. Usually they start up in January for fall town or regular town meetings. So It's up to the board. We've done it on a Wednesday and a different day in the past so that all 3 boards can come in. We've also done it last year right before a select board meeting and just started the select board meeting later, so.
So you would kind of be bumping Dr. Burtis's plan, but I think she kind of indicated
She didn't want to, but would.
yeah,
Change.
yeah, so.
I thought it'd be easier for the board with everything going on to do it all in one day, but certainly feedback. What do you guys think?
I just want to get the save the date on my calendar.
Whatever it is.
Whatever it works.
One day or 2 different days?
One?
Yeah, I think one. One.
Okay.
So
One.
what was that, December 5th?
Yes, Tuesday, December 5th, so we'll start at 6 o'clock.
Start at
Do
6,
to
have the tri-board
7:30.
meeting, and then our meeting at 7:30.
So obviously that's subject to making sure everybody else can do it, but we vetted it lightly, so.
Okay, good.
We can let Amy know, and AdCom, I think, is flexible and appreciated if we kept in the loop. So Marie has already agreed to that presentation date, so.
Let's get the date out now.
Yep.
Yep.
Will do.
Okay. And then this week, I've been frantically writing a grant for a self-evaluation and transition plan for Americans with Disabilities Act. So it's something that we need to do, and there's a grant program that ends Friday, so I'm doing that in my free time. From Human Resources, we already mentioned that we do have 2 interviews. We've already interviewed 2 candidates. We have another one tomorrow. Mary Beth suggested we do 3 as a best practice. And we hope to be able to make an offer, within the next week. And especially given the timeline, it's important we get someone on board. So with respect to library, you're doing how many, 5 interviews tomorrow?
6 interviews
tomorrow, so that one position will be narrowed down after tomorrow. And I think Chris mentioned, we've got only 1 position left open over there, and they've hired a laborer, tree and parks, and an account coordinator was hired yesterday, so he's almost at full staff. In the last week, I've conducted 7 performance reviews, thanks to this one over here. It almost killed me, back to back, but I have 1 more tomorrow, and that will pretty much close out the requirement for reviews. Construction updates, Chris already gave them. A miscellaneous update I have is just Hurricane Lee. I have no knowledge of it, but just for residents, I did see a report, Intel on a possible wind effects on Saturday, so residents should just keep their eye on the forecast, that's the best way to know. And that's all I have.
Just one thing that's on your list too is, I know that it kind of blew up last year with the Lions and the POW vigil at the same time.
Yep,
And
that's
they are
coming up.
scheduled for the same time again this year, but just making sure everyone knows that all the groups vetted that out and are in agreement and know it's going to be happening, since that was kind of, I think, the straw that broke the camel's back last year on common use.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I should mention I didn't mention that, sorry, I forgot my.
We can they're all printed on the
Yeah,
agenda.
the town, but I think the most important one is due to weather, the crustaceans on the common that was scheduled for tomorrow night has been postponed till next Wednesday night. So if you ordered a lobster roll, it's a great event. I ordered a lobster roll. You have to pre-order a lobster roll. And so next week, that'll be happening from 4:30 to 5:30, I guess, or 4:30 to 6:30, I'm not sure. And then, there was a block party that was held. We did talk to them about getting it in earlier next year. The POW MIA Vigil is hosted by Veterans Services is September 15th for 24 hours, starting at 3 p.m. And there's a couple car washes on September 17th and 23rd.
Contagious.
Yes. Thank you. Under Selectmen's update, Paige already mentioned, we got heads up on the Zach Bryant concert, which was very nice before it went out social media. But the big important thing under old business, we had Clean Up Foxborough Day come in our last meeting, but as they met, they decided it was better to move back to a springtime cleanup. So they're postponing Foxborough cleanup till May 11th, 2024. Any other thoughts from the board?
All right, we've got 4 action items that I'm going to roll into then. All right, motion to approve the change of officers for President and Treasurer from Lynn Schweinfurth to Joshua Wilson, and Vice President and Secretary Michael Kaplan to Sarah Muster for Red Robin International at 201 Patriot Place.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Under further discussion, they did have a cocktail competition at Patriot Place, and Red Robin was the winner. Who would have thought, with all
Nice.
the restaurants up there, that Red Robin would have the winning cocktail, so,
Huh?
yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, next we have a use of public way. So motion to approve the use of public way application for the Knights of Columbus Annual Tootsie Roll Drive on September 30th from 8 to 1 p.m. on the corners of the Common.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion to appoint Eric Hogberg to the Zoning Board of Appeals as an associate member for a term to end May 31st, 2024.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Motion to appoint Tom Rossbach to the Stadium Advisory Committee for a term to end 5/31/24.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion to adjourn.
If I can clarify one thing.
What about the extended
There's,
hours?
there's
Oh,
three
did I miss
more.
one? Oh, I have to scroll down. Sorry. Sorry.
Can I, and I just have to point out, Katie, just let me know that,
Sorry, go ahead.
oh, is it fixed in there?
It's not.
Okay. So Jake and Joe's asked for 11 a.m., not 10 a.m. So only the Renaissance and Wormtown is 10 a.m. Jake and Joe's is 11.
Okay, so I'll read that as I do it, okay. All right, sorry, I had three more. We have a lot of action items. I had to scroll all the way. Motion to approve the extended hours request for Renaissance Hotel and Hilton Garden Inn at 26 Patriot Place and Wormtown Brewery LLC at 250 Patriot Place to open and serve alcohol starting at 10 a.m. on October 8th, October 22nd, November 5th, and December 3rd, 2023.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Motion to approve the extended hours request for Jake and Joe's at 25 Foxborough Boulevard to open and serve alcohol starting at 11 a.m. for all remaining Sundays in 2023, beginning 9/17/23.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah. Why? Like, they're not up at the I mean, I know when we usually do this in restaurants who are up at the stadium, it seems to be all game days.
I think
So-
11 a.m. is lunch. Like, I think that's probably why they're not looking for 10. Katie's on.
Katie?
Okay, perfect.
Did you hear the question?
It's coming down from their corporate office. They are now going to be starting to incorporate an earlier lunch. So it's not something that just this Jake and Joe's decided. It's coming down from their corporate office.
And that's within the normal hours. Like, we're not making an exception. That's normal hours for Sunday. They're just changing their hours?
Not normal Sundays. Normal Sundays would be noon.
Oh, starting noon, okay.
I mean, I'm just, I mean, normally it's noon, right? I don't know.
So corporately, they're opening at 11 instead of 12?
Yes.
Or were they, I understood they were always open and maybe they're looking for just alcohol. What's the difference? Which are they doing?
That's what I was thinking.
I'm going to look up their time that they're open right now. I mean, even if they were open at 8 a.m. on Sundays, they wouldn't be able to serve alcohol until noon.
I just don't think that there's no reason to change when they get to serve alcohol. Like, I know we do it up at the stadium and we do it on game days because everybody's there. So
And we do it for brunches elsewhere.
yeah, if
right?
somebody, well, yeah. if
This
they
falls under
apply for
the
it.
brunch law.
Yeah.
That's why I kind of, I don't know, that's why I kind of feel like the time that's given to them is noon. I'm just not seeing why we would switch it. I guess I don't see a good reason to switch it.
But we do it for other restaurants that do it for all, like the other brunch ones, like I could be wrong, but I feel like maybe Davio, Skip, so like I think this one to me falls under like just brunch.
Like
Are they,
Union Straw probably. does
Yeah,
it.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
are they serving brunch?
yeah. They're opening for lunch at 11.
Well, they already open right now at 11:30. They're going to be asking, I think they're going to be switching their hours on every Jake and Joe's and switching that to 11 a.m. So they'd want to serve right when they open for business.
Yeah, so it really falls under the brunch umbrella on a Sunday.
But they're not changing their menu. They're not, you know
You
what I'm
don't
saying?
have to
They're
so
not-
long as food is served.
Yeah, I'm just saying, normally isn't there normally a reason? Is 12 normally the time, or is it based on when they open, Katie?
No, 12 on Sundays is the normal time.
Yeah, like
This is
Red
just,
Wing
like,
opens at
like
12
Doc said, it would be
because
falling
that's
under like a
when
brunch
Like-
opening early. They did not say that they are going to be serving brunch items, but yes, like an earlier lunch.
Do we have other restaurants that serve earlier just because they're open and are looking to serve? Because I guess brunch can be, I mean, it's brunch. It doesn't mean you have to have pancakes on the menu. Do we have other
Right.
restaurants that we do allow to open at 10 every Sunday? I mean, 11 every Sunday.
Yeah, Union Straw.
Just the ones that are up at Patriot Place. So right now it is Davio's, and there is one more that did, that was on the last agenda. They're up at Patriot Place, but yes, they are falling under like the brunch category, but they're at,
Doesn't
in the air
Union
around the
Straw serve alcohol early on Sunday?
I'm sorry, which was the restaurant? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Union Straw. Don't they have a brunch at,
I
on
believe
Sunday?
Union Straw, actually, they're one, I believe I think it's Jake and Joe, I'm sorry, I think it's Union Straw, Citizen Crust, and the stadium all had an alteration of hours, and they, are always gonna be 10 a.m. on Sundays. That's just when they submitted their license, that's, what came through. And if you remember, Gillette did their hours amendment about a year ago.
So I think,
What about Conrad's? What time do they, are they 11 or are they noon?
Well, I'm saying, but they're not asking
Noon.
to change their license. They're just, I mean, my point is, normally for restaurants, like I just said, I mean, Red Wing's in Walpole, so I'm just saying, but 12 o'clock, I think, is
yeah,
Sunday.
but the rules changed. You could have brunch on Sunday earlier. That came down from the state years ago. And now they're corporately changing their hours to fall into that.
And I don't think we should
that's-
cripple a restaurant that's outside of the stadium just because they're not at the stadium. Like, they should be allowed to open early too on Sundays, just like other restaurants should.
But wouldn't they do it the process the way the other restaurants did? They're coming in to change their licensing, not just for us to okay on Sundays.
Maybe they're test
Am I
driving it
am I
before
wrong
they
in
go through it.
understanding the process, Katie? Maybe I'm wrong in
Yes.
understanding the process.
No, but you are correct in the process. It's just that requires a lot more paperwork and a lawyer. So like I'm just looking through Gillette, excuse me.
Yeah, maybe they're just
Sorry,
test
it's a
driving it. It's
big
not permanent.
spreadsheet.
It's just, a couple months and then
Sorry,
Katie can
I
tell them.
misspoke. It's actually Tavolino's, Citizen Crust, the Harp. They are all set for every Sunday, no matter what year it is, to start serving at 10 a.m. on Sundays.
Okay, that's better for, I thought we were just okaying those on game days,
No.
that's why. Well, no, because my point is, they opened at 11:30 and weren't serving till 12, so they already had, so now they're want to open 11, so they didn't try to change it before, she said their normal open hours. I'm just saying, there was always the reason why it was 12 o'clock on Sundays, that's why I want to make sure there was a good reason why we were going to do it, that's all.
Okay, all those in favor?
All right.
All right, we have 2 minutes to approve. Motion to approve June 28th, 23 Select Board minutes.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve August 16th, 2023 Select Board minutes.
Second.
Any further discussion? Nope. All those in favor?
One, we just need Dennis Keefe's initials. I don't know if maybe they're not in there somewhere, and that's why, okay. Sorry. It's just-
Adjourn.
All right, motion to adjourn.
Just before a second, I wanted to say it earlier, Christina, that was a really nice job on the manager search.
Thank you.
Yes.
Taking all the information,
Good job.
putting it all together in a very digestible format. It was really, really good, so thank you.
And a very nice looking PowerPoint as well.
Yeah, all
what I do.
all across.
What she does. All right,
Second.
all right. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Good night, everybody.
Good night.